Waiting. All right, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Joint Transportation, Highways, Military Affairs. We are September 12th, 2024. And before we get started, I'm going to just open with a few remarks. And that is, we have got a very, very busy 2 days, committee and public. And so going to be kind of direct with our instructions for the next 2 days. Keep everything pithy, direct, concise. We have a lot to go over, and a lot of this information is a lot of information that this committee has requested as we moved forward. So we have already had a lot of these discussions. If there is something you are seriously concerned about, please feel free to ask those questions. Otherwise, let's try to work through these bills, work through these discussions as fast and as promptly as possible. We will also be making sure that when we open up public comment, we will be discussing public comment on the topics discussed. We are not going to be opening up public comment for any and all conversations to be forwarded to us. So please be aware of that as well. And with that, Co-Chairman Boner, you have any opening statements?
I think that covers it, Mr. Chairman. We have some work to do, so let's get to it.
All right. With that, I'm not sure. Is it Eve that you're doing roll call? If I can have you please provide roll call.
Senator Brennan. Here. Senator Furphy.
Excuse.
Senator Kolb.
Present.
Senator Kolb.
Present.
Senator Pappas.
Here.
Representative Berger.
Here. Here.
Representative Nemec.
Here.
Representative O'Hearn.
Here.
Representative Obermueller.
Here.
Representative Pendergraft.
Here.
Representative Smith.
Here.
Representative Stivar.
Present.
Representative Wiley.
Here.
Co-Chairman Boner.
Here.
Chairman Brown.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And also to let the committee know, you will have a few of us that are unfortunately going to have to duck out tomorrow around noon, myself included. I've got to head back to Cheyenne for a funeral, and I think Representative Wiley is officiating a wedding tomorrow, or Saturday. So we're going to pray for those that are being officially wed by him. But with that, I do need to, it is something that has changed in our protocol as a committee as well. The chairman used to just authorize the approval of the minutes to have those posted. And in the process of just ever changing legislative procedures, we do need a motion to approve the minutes from last meeting. Is there any motion on that?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting? Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll go with Senator Pappas on the second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes from last meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. And seeing none, that motion passes. All right, Talise, we got that one taken care of. We're ready to roll there. We are on to our 8:35 motion. We're 4 minutes ahead here. And with that, we're going to keep that moving. General, we have Bill Draft 25 LSO 77, but I actually have Talise ahead of us. So I'm going to have Talise walk us through the bill, and then we'll go over that with you guys.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hansen, Staff Attorney, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 77, version 0.6, Protection of Military Equipment. This bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting. The request was to draft a bill similar to Montana's Protection of Military Equipment statute and to add language to protect state security officers as recommended by the military department. I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 starts on page 1, line 11, by creating Wyoming Statute 62603. The staff comment on page 2 states that the bill draft is based on the Montana statute as requested by the committee, but it does not contain a provision from the Montana statute that requires the servicing staff judge advocate to provide a briefing on the rules for the use of force to military members before defending military equipment. The provision from the Montana statute is provided in the staff comment for your reference. Page 2, lines 34 through 37, and page 3, lines 1 through 6 provide the new language of the statute for the use of force in defense of military equipment. The statute provides that a state security officer, a member of the armed forces, or a member of the Wyoming National Guard in active state service who is on official duty defending military equipment is privileged to use reasonable force as necessary to defend military equipment, including deadly force, in accordance with the requirements of this section and published military regulations and doctrine regarding the use of force. The staff comment on page 3 provides that the committee may wish to consider providing a definition of military equipment. The staff comment provides some definitions of military equipment from other states. Section 2 starts on page 5. Page 6, lines 1 through 4 provides a definition of state security officer to mean a person employed by the military department whose primary duties include being armed and securing military assets controlled by the military department. Page 6, line 10, adds state security officers to the protections in Wyoming Statute 199401C to state that no state security officer shall incur any personal liability, civil or criminal, by reason of acts committed in the performance of his necessary duty. Page 6, lines 16 and lines 20 and 21 add state security officer as conforming amendments. Section 3 on page 7, lines 2 through 4 provides that the affirmative defense created by Section 1 of this act shall be made available as an affirmative defense to conduct occurring on and after July 1st, 2025. Section 4 on page 7, line 6 provides an effective date of July 1st, 2025, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Talise. Committee, over the bill draft itself and for Ms. Hanson, any questions on the particularly the language and or the staff comments? Seeing none for Talise. General and retired Colonel, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chris Smith with the Wyoming Military Department. Just for the committee's benefit, as you'll recall from our June hearing, we're just trying to close the loophole. We have currently 17 state security officers who guard C-130 aircraft at the Cheyenne Airport. They are trained to use deadly force to protect things like aircraft. You can imagine, since we're on the 12th of September, with 9/11 having just been memorialized yesterday, aircraft have become far more important than we once expected. So this bill would help us in that regard and statute so that it is a very clear thing for our military members. Regarding the staff comment about military property, only some military property is by regulation in classified documentation to be protected with deadly force. And that is something our military members who do the security mission are briefed on. Every time they go on a mission, they are briefed on the rules of engagement, rules on use of force. They're told what property you can and can't do that with. They always can protect themselves and others with the use of deadly force, as is true in the Wyoming statute. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for any further questions from the committee.
Committee, this was a pretty straightforward bill. However, I do think that there was some good discussions here in the staff comments. Is there any questions for Colonel Smith or retired Colonel Smith? Sorry. Any questions? Yes, Co-Chairman Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to make sure we get this right. So it says military department. I'm assuming that means the Wyoming Military Department. And a definition of state security officer on page 6. Would there be any circumstance where another state's National Guard would say, if they're visiting the Cheyenne Airport or Camp Guernsey, say they bring some Ravens security forces tied specifically to that aircraft, is there any possibility that they would be state security officers from their home state? And do you think, if so, would they deserve the same protections that our Wyoming National Guardsmen do? I'm just wondering if better understand the circumstances. Is that a possibility, or all security forces that be attached to aircraft be not in this category of state security officers?
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, it's an interesting question. You can consider a possibility, but the state security officers are Wyoming employees of the state government. They are not military members. Under EMAC and in the various ways that we would trade forces with another state in an emergency situation, they would always be in a state active duty status and already covered.
Thank you. Okay. Committee, any further questions? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. We will open this up to public comment before we move any further here. Moving right along, is there any public comment on 24 LSO 77 protection of military equipment? I don't believe we had anybody online for this one, right? Okay. All right, seeing nobody jumping up to come rushing to the table for this one, we'll close public comment. Committee, what is your pleasure on this particular bill?
Bill.
Bill has been
Second.
moved by Senator Pappas, seconded by Representative Stivar. All right, committee, let's go ahead and work this bill, and we're going to do this one page by page since there is quite a few staff comments here. Let's make sure that we're getting all this done. Page 1, don't really see anything there except we are creating a new statute. But going into page 2, any discussion based off of the staff comment about the roles and responsibilities of adding an additional staff adjutant, easy for me to say. Judge advocate, there we go. Any discussion on that? I don't think that was ever requested from the military department. I don't think that that's really what they were going for in this particular bill. So good discussion there. I think we can just move through that. The rest of page 2, state security officer being defined, moving into page 3. And moving into page 3 with the staff comment here, any discussion on the staff comments there wanting to define military equipment or anything along those lines and getting that nitty gritty with this particular bill? Okay, seeing no discussions there. Moving on to page 4 and through page 4 into page 5. And moving from page 5 to 6, state security officer is just creating that definition. And then page 6 through the remaining portion of this, just making those conforming changes. Any further discussion on the bill? Yes, Representative Obermueller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, could you weigh in on these staff comments, particularly this last one regarding naming the equipment and being more specific in those definitions?
General, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermueller, actually, I'll probably let Chris weigh in. He did address most of those staff comments in our discussion, but if it pleases you, and that please, Chris, if you talk it again.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermueller, as I think we talked a little bit about in June, the property that are considered priority assets, that's the term of art the DoD uses, that you can use deadly force to protect. It can change over time. So it's a classified document. We don't tell our enemies what we're willing to use deadly force to protect, or in the other assets we're not. You can think weapon systems, to be as broad as I can be. From the military department's perspective, we would like the statute to stay broad and flexible so that, some of our enemies have shown themselves to be very interesting about how they attack us. And we don't want to lock ourselves in to only certain military property, because in the future, we may have to include other property. So in a sense, we're asking the legislature in Wyoming to rely on the DoD to set aside those types of military property that deadly force is warranted to protect, and not lock it up in statute that may require a change fairly quickly in the environment we're currently in. I don't know if that's enough to answer the question.
Okay. Senator Pappas.
Yeah, thank you. And I agree with all of that. Plus I'm reluctant every time I see lists in statute, because then if there's something missed, there's an issue there could be an issue down the line. So I agree. Let's keep it broad and not put any lists of equipment. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Colton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think broadly, anything that's support equipment that could be taken out will in fact take out an aircraft. I mean, if you can't start the aircraft, you're not going to run the aircraft. So I think it needs to be left broad to keep the assets usable. Thank you.
Okay. Committee, any further discussion?
Call for the question.
All right, question has been called. This is a roll call vote, and committee, this is going to be for the committee to sponsor 24 LSO 77, as is, no amendments made. So nice work, Talise.
Senator Brennan.
Aye.
Senator Furphy. Senator Kolb,
Aye.
Senator Pappas,
Aye.
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec,
Aye.
Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Obermuller,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Boner,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
It is a unanimous vote.
And staff, we're going to wait before we get through our next meeting to decide where we're going to send these House or Senate. So thank you, committee, on that. We've blasted through there and almost an hour ahead of schedule now. So committee is rock stars today. That puts us up to military recruitment and retention, Wyoming National Guard, Bill Draft 24 LSO 78. And Ms. Hanson, you're up again.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, I'm presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 78, version 0.5, Wyoming National Guard Member Referral Amendments. The bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting to expand the referral bonus program. So I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 on page 1 amends Wyoming Statute 19-9403, the Wyoming National Guard Member Referral Incentive Program. Page 2, lines 11 through 14, add retired military service members, current employees of the military department, and recruits beginning the enlistment process with the Wyoming National Guard as persons eligible to receive a referral bonus if they make a successful referral. Page 2, lines 17 through 20 is a conforming amendment. Page 2, lines 10 through 13 states that the military department shall not distribute a referral bonus to a referring recruit until the referring recruit has membership in the Wyoming National Guard. Page 3, lines 17 through 20, add a definition of retired military service to mean a person who has retired from the armed forces as defined by Wyoming Statute 81102A21, the Army National Guard or Air National Guard. Page 3, line 22 is a conforming amendment. Section 2 on page 4, line 5 provides an effective date of July 1st, 2025, and I'll stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Hanson? Again, a pretty straightforward bill, but want to make sure that we dot our i's and cross our t's as we're moving forward here. Pretty interesting. I don't see very many two-section bills either. These are kind of fun when we have these quick bills. So seeing no discussion there. General.
Sir, I think, this is important as we continue to prepare for, the future fight. We expect to go into large-scale combat operations, and the ability for us to expand our recruiting efforts is ever important as we focus on that, plus protecting the residents here in Wyoming. So I appreciate the committee's support on this from the origination of the referral program, and we're just looking for a little more flexibility to try to get even more folks to help us in the recruiting efforts. So thank you very much for the support of the committee.
Committee, any discussions, any questions for, yes, Representative Stivar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much of the bonus money has been given out and what's left?
Mr. Smith, I see you shaking your head.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar. To the last number I had is we've given out 54 referral bonuses. The program went into effect in July of 23, so it's been just over a year. That equates to almost 2% of our overall strength. So it's had an impact. The legislature appropriated, and I didn't bring the bill with me, I apologize. I think it was something like $800,000 during the time of the program. The program actually sunsets that we'll have to address in 26 because we wanted to see if it works, and if it doesn't work, stop doing it. What this does, we started very narrowly with only current National Guard members being able to refer people. Discuss that a little bit. mainly to keep a good handle on it, make sure there was no fraud. We know who our members are. We're not getting an anonymous somebody saying, hey, I referred that person. This expands it a little more with people we still know, our employees, our retirees. So we still have a little bit more control over the process. So yeah, so it's 54. There's no additional appropriation needed. There's plenty of money still left to pay out.
Committee, anything further? Seeing, oh, yes. Okay. Co-chairman Boner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on page 3, it says that, and I think it's a good addition. You're not going to distribute any bonuses until the recruit has membership in the National Guard. At what point in the pipeline do they officially become members? Is it after they get the basic? Is it when they get to MEPS? Where is it?
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Co-Chairman, we think our newest recruits are probably our best recruiters because they know all the right people we're trying to get, that 18 to 24 age group, which is our prime recruiting populace. What this does is, as they start the process to join us, we wanted them to be able to refer their friends. When they, for this purpose, when they graduate basic, they are then a member. To get the referral, the person they refer just has to sign the enlistment contract, which is the beginning of the process. This would require them to be a member, which would require graduation from basic.
Committee, any other questions? Yes, Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has anybody backed out of the program once they signed the documents? What's the history there? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Smith, General.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Cole, not that I am aware of. I will double check though to make sure that, but I'm not tracking anybody that's we did a referral bonus to and then is backed out.
Okay. Chief Moore, do you want to talk today? Or?
It's just looking good.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I would make a joke, but I'll refrain. No, I think this program has been highly successful and that 2% is a lot. And we think if we can expand this program, we'll absolutely, to General Porter's point, our best recruiters are our new folks. And if we can get them recruiting for us early, they'll bring their friends along. And I see this being able to double. And then on the second side of it, opening up to our retirees. They're chomping at the bit to help us all the time. So this would be a great impact on this program.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So the only question I have, if there's nothing else here, so we talk about the retirees. My only thought on this is that is a very narrowly defined, but we have a lot of honorably separated. Was there discussion about from your guys' side whether or not that's a group or a classification that we should also be talking to? And I also recognize there are a lot more of those than there are the retirees, so that becomes a much broader scope. I'm thinking of a shotgun approach as opposed to a rifle approach here. So, Colonel Smith.
Mr. Chairman, we did discuss it. We went with retirees because we have a way to know who they are. With honorably separated folks, if they tell us who they are and give us their 214 and what branch they're in, we can confirm they're who they say they are. But one of the concerns we had, the Army years ago had a program similar to this that kind of had a train wreck with allegations of fraud. And so we're trying to be systematic and move this along slowly to ensure that we have enough stopgaps in there to ensure there's no fraud involved. Because you can imagine, hey, I'm going to join the Guard. Why don't you put my name in, kind of thing, and you'll get $500. We're trying to avoid that.
Okay. We
want new recruits who are brought along.
Absolutely. All right. All right. Thank you so much. Any public testimony on this bill? Seeing nobody jumping up for this one, we'll close public testimony. Committee, what is your pleasure on this bill? Moved by Senator Kolb, seconded by, I see Representative O'Hearn's hand.
Yes.
First. All right. Committee, let's go ahead. This is a short enough bill that I feel like working this one page by page as well. We'll just do this one nice and quick. So starting out on page 1, moving over to page 2 is the kind of the guts of the bill. Retired military service, current employees, any changes, any discussion there? Same language at the bottom there. Moving on to page 3. the distribution of the membership. Any questions there? Any changes? Seeing none. And then on bottom of page 3 is the direct definition of a retired service member. Seeing no changes there. And I'm seeing nothing there. All right. Anything else? How about a call for the question? Question being called. All right, Representative O'Hearn. This is for sponsorship of 25 LSO or 24 LSO, sorry, 78. Eve, if I can have you please call roll call on this one.
Senator Brennan,
Aye.
Senator Furby, Senator Cole,
Aye.
Senator Pappas,
Aye.
Representative Berger,
Aye.
Representative Nemec. Representative O'Hearn,
Aye.
Representative Obermueller,
Aye.
Representative Pendergraft,
Aye.
Representative Smith,
Aye.
Representative Stivar,
Aye.
Representative Wiley,
Aye.
Co-Chairman Boner,
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 noes.
All right. With that committee, we usually do, I wanted to blast through a couple bills, get us in the mode of moving forward, but I also recognize that I do not see the university ready to go for the next line. So what we will usually do is we usually have the tag give us a little bit of an update of what's going on. And so we'll go back a little bit here. We usually do this to start out, but it was not on the agenda and I kind of wanted to get us rolling. We are now officially 2 hours ahead of schedule. So with that, General, I don't want you to take the full 2 hours, but if you wouldn't mind updating us on what is going on with the military department, please.
Yep. Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mr. Co-Chairman. It's good to see you all again. So very quickly to start off with, I've got to slip out here in about 5 minutes. The President's National Security Advisor, Dr. Sherwood Randall, is giving the governors a briefing on something. It was kind of vague right now, so we're going to slip out here real quick and attend this briefing. I'll if I can, I'll let you know what it's about when I get back in here. Hopefully, it won't take us too long. But I will be very quick today, sir. So I did want to, if we could, just take a minute and recognize yesterday as 9/11 and today's events. Obviously, a huge effect on our country, the 9/11 attacks. I have sort of the perspective of about half my career was prior to 9/11 and about half my career has been after 9/11. And just watching what our country, as all of you have, changed over that time, and particularly our military and the National Guard has had a significant impact. We lost almost 3,000 people that day in the 9/11 attacks. And since that time, a little over 8,000 of our brothers and sisters in uniform and have also lost their lives. The Wyoming National Guard, we have 4 individuals that passed due to enemy action. Captain Hayes, Captain Lucero, Chief McAdams, and Sergeant Parrott. And if we could, just maybe a 15-second moment of silence just to recognize those folks and their families for the sacrifice that they made and continue to make, if they are all right, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. Sir, thank you to the committee and everybody for that. Very quickly, Wyoming National Guard is very busy at the moment, and we're focused on the threats to the state and the nation. China is building a military that is specifically designed to kill Americans and their allies. We are trying to get our heads up and pivoted to look that way, but I tell you, the rest of the world is not cooperating in that fact. We have quite a few of our soldiers in Central Command right now. The 2nd 300th, who you'll see in this first bullet, just arrived in CENTCOM this last week. So they'll be doing their relief in place, transition of authority in the upcoming days, and then they'll assume the mission for Operation Spartan Shield as the primary fires for the region. That'll be 9 months boots on ground. Pretty shortly after that, our brigade headquarters, their brigade headquarters, will 115th will deploy and take over that mission as well. So for a brief time of about 5 or 6 months, we'll have the headquarters and the firing battalion in Central Command doing that mission. We also, which I didn't list here, but we also have our C-12 is heading to Southern Command to do a mission down there for 9 months, and they'll be leaving about the day before the brigade will. Air National Guard currently has about 83 folks. Many of you know Major Jackie Morey. She's currently deployed. Lieutenant Colonel Karen Hinkle, our senior legal advisor, is currently deployed. They'll be back here this fall, and it'll be welcome. But we've got about 80 of our airmen spread out all across the combatant commands, from Southern Command to European Command, Indo-PACOM, to Central Command, to Africa Command. Virtually every one of our folks are spread across there. So we continue to be very busy. Probably the thing that I wanted to bring up to this, is a lot of our full-time folks deploy with these two. Just like you and your employees that are Guard members leave, we also have quite a few that it does affect us. And so with about a third of our Army force, we certainly are impacted by that. But I also wanted to take the time just to thank our communities and our employers for the sacrifice they make. We've been doing this for over 20 years now, and it's hard, particularly in Wyoming, where our companies tend to be smaller. Our ranching and agriculture industries, one person leaving is a big impact. So thank you again to everybody that supports our National Guard. We have tremendous support in the state. Our joint staff, primarily, we're focused on the SHIELD part of our mission, which is protecting our residents. We just had the briefing earlier this week, preparing us for winter storms, ice jams, all that good stuff. So we're focused on that as well. We still have that obligation to our governor, and continue to go down that road. So I think unless I have some questions for everybody, I will leave it there and turn it over to my esteemed colleagues if they've got anything. And I'm sorry, I have to slip out for a moment.
Completely understood. And I actually think we've got Mr. Shope sitting behind you. So if he wants to give us any updates, I know that we've also got a Veterans Commission update. I don't know if that was, so we're gonna send that over to Chris Smith here. So thank you very much, and we'll see you back in here shortly. Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Tim Shepard, our Executive Director, had surgery yesterday. He's doing okay. I talked to him today. He may have said, I don't know what he might have said if he was testifying today after surgery yesterday. It was an interesting conversation with him, but I think he's doing well. So you got me again. So on slide 4, 5, and 6, one of the things the committee asked us back in June was we were talking about specifically the Veterans Talking to Veterans program, and the committee asked for additional information. So on slide 4 of the slides you hopefully have in front of you, this is some of the information about it. It's a program that started in December 21. It's peer-to-peer counseling. We take regular veterans who are willing to participate. We train them up in a little, layperson counseling, how to run a program. It's actually done under a contract with a private enterprise. Veterans Talking to Veterans is their trademark. So from a state point of view, we're talking about peer counseling. Veterans Talking to Veterans is a specific company's program. They've trained a total of 40 coaches. 29 of them remain active. I think, we cast the net very broadly, and anybody who's willing to go through the training, we welcome, but it's not everybody's cup of tea once they get into it. Currently, there are 12. It's a group setting. They try to gather veterans together. As some of the veterans on this committee have noted in the past, veterans don't like to go to the VA. They don't like to talk to outside people, but they might talk to other veterans. So we have 12 groups in the state of Wyoming. There's actually 3 in Idaho. There's an online program that includes people from Wyoming and Colorado. So it's really expanded since 21 when it first started. The average cost to train a coach is $5,000. It's a program. It takes time out of the veterans who are willing to volunteer. Overhead cost is, you can see it there, is about $37,000. To date, it's been totally done by grants. The Episcopal Church gave us a grant to train up to 10 more counselors. I actually have a list. If you Google Veterans Talking to Veterans in Wyoming locations, you'll see the 12 locations. I have the list here if anybody's interested afterwards on where they are. They're in a lot of churches and a lot of veterans gathering places like the DAV and such, Disabled American Veteran locations. Currently, we have about 75 people participating as participants, not coaches. And like it says here, Idaho has a program. They currently have 3. I think the third one is just standing up now. The committee asked in June what they could do to help the program. Right now, The Veterans Commission is pursuing up to $750,000 in grants. There's grant money out there. So today, I think we don't have an ask of this committee. If grants kind of fall through, we may seek in the next governor's budget or supplemental budget or down the regular budgeting process some additional money. But I think at this point, we don't really have an ask of the committee, except to let you know the program's out there. And I think it's a great program. Tim's been recognized as nationally a couple of different times for this program because it's getting some great feedback. On the next 2 pages, you'll see on slides 5 and 6, this is some of the feedback. We've had
Testing 1, 2.
Okay.
I think we're up.
Okay, yep, okay. Well,
I do, Mr. Chair.
you do have some questions.
do have
All
a
right,
question.
Senator Pappas, please.
Yeah, I'm on an NCSL National Committee. In fact, I'm the vice chair of the Military and Veterans Committee for NCSL. And I was just out at a meeting in Kentucky, and they gave us a report on suicides in the veteran population. And the percentage of suicides for the percentage of the veterans that are residing in the state we were one of the highest states. I think it was over 10% of the veteran force. Can you tell me, is there anything that that the commission is doing to address suicide prevention in the veteran community?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, we briefed some data to the committee back in June. It's a major concern. The governor, has his governor's challenge on suicide prevention, and that includes veterans. The Wyoming Veterans Commission, we pursued having a full-time deputy director in the budget session, and that has now been hired. That deputy director has a couple of primary tasks, but the biggest one is to work suicide prevention programs and coordination. I think, the American Legion, the Disabled American Veterans, this Veterans Talking to Veterans, there's a lot of attempts to try to get at the suicide problem. As this committee is probably well aware, Wyoming, depending on the survey, ranks in the top 3 typically for suicides per capita in the country generally. And certainly our veterans are no different in Wyoming. So it has become a major task. It is a top priority for the Veterans Commission, and they are going everywhere they can across the state to try to bring in as many people in the community to try to address this. And the Veterans Talking to Veterans program was born out of that desire to try to reach out to veterans. The VA, of course, the Veterans Administration has, I think, tripled the number of psychological health people they have in Wyoming, in Sheridan, in Cheyenne in the last 5 years. But again, you just can't always get veterans to go to the VA, and it's something we work on very hard. We have 8 VSOs, Veteran Service Officers, that are state employees, part of the Veterans Commission, who do outreach to veterans and help them file VA claims, try to get them into these programs. So we're doing a lot of things. Are they effective? Don't know yet.
Mr. Chairman, follow up. So is there anything that the legislature could do to assist the commission in that role, whether it be, additional funding, or whether it be, I don't know what it would be. changes in statute? Is there anything we could do?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Pappas, as we briefed in June, we kind of threw some stuff up on the wall about mental health. We're going to look at the Bill 83, which tries to get at veterans' mental health issues. We talked about other big programs. I think Jen Davis from the governor's office is going to talk about some of what the governor's office has been doing to address mental health generally and veteran mental health specifically. At this point, as much as I hate to turn down an offer for monetary support, I really think our legislature has done a great job by agreeing with the governor to fund the deputy director for the Veterans Commission for really getting after veteran suicide. And I appreciate the offer of help. If Tim and his commission come up with things, I'm sure they'll be in touch, Senator.
Thank you. Okay. Committee, yes, Representative Obermueller, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier in the discussion of 9/11 and the aftermath, 4 servicemen were mentioned. Could you send me and perhaps the committee those names? I don't see those names in the material, and I'd like to have those names, please.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Obermueller, of course. The tag and I, when we were driving over, we realized we failed to include that, and we had meant to. So that we dropped the ball on that. We'll gladly send them. Just as a personal anecdote, one of the things as a lawyer in my past life as a JAG, one of those members, I did their will before they deployed. So that really brought it home.
Okay, thank you.
Committee, any further questions for Mr. Smith related to Veterans Commission? Yes, Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just want to voice my appreciation of this work. It seems like it's an excellent model for moving forward where you are supporting good work, not necessarily, taking the lead. I think, state government can learn from that, and that, things like veterans organizations, in this instance, churches, it seems like we're supporting kind of this grassroots organizations that are already going to be doing this work naturally. So I think this is actually a really good model. And so I want to just voice my appreciation for the way that this is structured. And a part of that, of course, is relying on grants and the private sector in general to help support this effort. And so I just want to hope and have a little bit more clarity. Say, you're applying for some grants, and you may be back with a budget request if those do not work out. I'm just wondering more specifically if you have an idea, is that going to be potentially at this next session? Would it be at the next budget session? Do you have any, just a bit more detail on the timeline there?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, and I apologize. I don't have all the details on the grants, but my understanding is at this point, we have enough funding through sometime next year. So we did not put in a supplemental budget request for this next session. So it would be the next budget session. So we're talking the January 26th budget session. If something changes, we'll certainly let you know. The good news is across the veteran service organizations and communities, there is a lot of interest in doing something. So we have a lot of support from the private sector and from these other entities. But I appreciate your comments, Senator.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just follow up. Yeah, I think that's can be, like I said, hopefully a model for even other parts of state government where we look to the private sector first instead of always coming to legislature. I commend you for doing that. I hope you keep it up.
I will pass that on to Mr. Shepherd.
Yeah, and I'll just echo those sentiments as well. And I would also say, I think it's pretty impressive and very well known, this is being modeled, this is not something that we're just doing here. This is going across the country, and he's being recognized for the work that he's doing with this. So very, very impressive. And maybe if he's really bored, he's watching us. And if he is, thank you to Colonel Shepherd. But beyond that, thank you for relaying the information. Committee, any further questions? Seeing none, we can still have university. Do I have anybody from the University of Wyoming here for the next discussion? I don't see anybody else walking in yet, but just want to make sure. So what we're going to do, committee, because I do not have them available quite yet, we're going to take a 15-minute break. We'll come back at 9:30. That'll give us just a very short recess and hopefully we can get somebody in here from the university and we actually do have the Community College Commission here ready to roll, but but we probably got somebody trekking across Prex's pasture over there trying to get to us. So with that, we'll gavel out for 15 minutes and we'll come back. All right, committee, we're going to call this meeting back to order. As stated earlier, we are way ahead of schedule. We're going to continue that trend. However, what that does is that means that puts us at needing, putting us 2.5 hours ahead of schedule here for lunch. So what we may do, since we've got everybody here for our 2 p.m. as well, we may end up taking our 2 p.m. military suicide prevention early, just as a heads up. We may take that early. We'll see. We'll kind of confer as we move forward. But our next bill is our post-secondary education military support. We have 25 LSO 79 Community College Commission Veteran Service position, and I have Ms. Hanson on that one again.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney, LSO. I'm presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 79, version 0.5, Community College Commission Veteran Services position. This bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting to resurrect a bill draft considered by this committee last interim with some requested changes. I'll start by walking through the bill draft. The staff comment on page 1 provides that the committee may wish to consider whether funding and authorization of a full-time position for the Wyoming Community College Commission is better suited in the supplemental budget bill or forwarded as a recommendation to the governor and the Joint Appropriations Committee. Section 1 begins on page 2. Subsection A on page 2, lines 6 through 12, authorizes 1 full-time position for the Wyoming Community College Commission for the purpose of coordinating and assisting in the provision of and fundraising for veteran services at Wyoming community colleges and the University of Wyoming for students attending Wyoming community colleges, the University of Wyoming Casper, and the University of Wyoming Online. Subsection B on page 2, lines 24 through 28, appropriates $100,512 from the general fund to the Wyoming Community College Commission for purposes of funding the full-time position for the period beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026. The staff comment on page 2 states that this appropriation amount was provided by the Wyoming Community College Commission and the committee may wish to modify it. Page 3, lines 4 through 8 provides that it is the intent of the legislature that this appropriation and the authorized position be included in the standard budget for the Wyoming Community College Commission for the immediately succeeding fiscal biennium. Section 2 on page 3, line 10 provides an effective date of July 1st, 2025, and I'll stand for any questions.
Ready? Any questions for Ms. Hanson on the bill itself? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Hanson. Carl Smith, I have you up next, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Wyoming Military Department and Veterans Commission is, of course, supportive of this. As longtime members of this committee will recall, we tried to give a position to the Community College Association. Back at that time, we actually produced a chart of what each of the community colleges in UW do. I know in June, we heard from Marty Martinez, who runs a great program here at UW. And the various community colleges don't have the funding to provide direct services for veterans in the same way as UW. And I think the idea behind this position was to try to help the community colleges with resourcing and sharing information across the various 8 schools so that to help our veterans. And we're very much supportive of that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand for the committee's questions.
Okay, committee, any questions for the military department and or Veterans Commission? Seeing none, takes us over to the university. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just have a couple of comments, observations that I emailed, sorry for the late email, but emailed to the committee yesterday and really just clean up. I know in conversations I've had with Senator Boner, some of the I don't know if I'd call them gaps, but places that folks are looking to really focus on the UW side, given the great services provided here on the ground in Laramie through the Veteran Services Center and Marty Martinez and his team were online folks in our Casper campus And so want to be respectful of that, but also recognize as drafted, identifying those as entities in the bill wouldn't necessarily be accurate. They're programs within the University of Wyoming. And so just suggested some language change that maybe had the commission authorized that one full-time position, but then when we talk about the scope of that position, that the purpose be not just coordinating and assisting in the provision of and fundraising for veteran services for students attending Wyoming community colleges, but cooperating with the University of Wyoming Veteran Services Center for students attending the University of Wyoming. Totally open to broadening that to make clear that students attending the University of Wyoming would include not just in person on campus and on the main campus, but in other satellite locations or online, whatever gets the committee comfortable. And we're certainly have no position on the bill as far as other than just want to suggest some possible cleanup. Thank you.
Okay. And any questions for Mr. Smith and the potential changes in the language sent out and just discussed? Seeing none there. Okay. Oh, yes, Mr. Co-Chairman, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the feedback there. I think the overall intent is clear and well taken that, obviously UW Casper is a part of UW, obviously online students going to the University of Wyoming are students at the University of Wyoming. But we're, trying to make sure that everybody's taken care of as part of the UW family here, especially with the veteran services. And there's been good work there, but it seems like there's an opportunity for expanding the good work to those folks there. So I've also had a chance to observe in action Mr. Martinez and his team working with the community colleges. And it seems like that relationship is already existing, and we're, as far as I'm concerned, what we can do is sort of solidify and encourage that participation. So just a little bit more information or your perspective on how you see that cooperation working between UW and the community colleges, and of course, maybe we could hear from the community colleges too. What role would the legislature play in enhancing that cooperation?
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair. And happy to have Mr. Martinez come up and give his perspective too, at your discretion, Mr. Chairman. But I would say, from my perspective, there's great cooperation and working together already. Adding this position under the commission will help raise the level of services throughout the community college system, in my view, and will only increase that kind of cooperative spirit with Mr. Martinez and his team. I think the key is often when you set up things is just clarifying that chain of command. And I just want to make sure that at some point down the road that the folks at our Veteran Services Center here have that ability to tap that resource for those areas that they identify internally as the need, but not have in some way this what becomes a joint position or a position of authority over what they're doing at the commission, if that makes sense.
Committee, any further questions for University? Yes, Representative Pendergraph, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity a couple of months ago to go meet with Mr. Martinez and representatives from the other junior colleges. And I've been a fan for several years now, 2 years at least, of the work that Mr. Martinez has done at the University of Wyoming. One of the reasons I'm a fan was when he got there, he realized there was so much more that could be done than what was funded. And rather than turn around and come to the legislature and ask for more money, he went out and found donors, volunteers who gave money to that, and he was able to do much more. At this meeting that I alluded to, speaking to the junior college representatives, he flat out said, this is a pretty easy lift, raising money for this kind of a program. There are people out there to be found. So my question than for anybody that's up there, is can you tell me what has been done in the few months prior to look for donors to actually do the task that you're asking to hire somebody to do? Have we tried doing this with existing people?
Mr. Smith, I think that was originally directed toward you, but I think it sounds like that's going towards the community college side of things. And then, so what we'll do is we'll open this up for Ms. Ballard's testimony, but I also recognize that's a pretty in-depth conversation about what's going on at each individual college. So if you can speak broadly to what has happened, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually want to say this, I really like this bill. UW has been able to do some amazing work when you have somebody that has time and the ability to dedicate the work to be able to do that. I don't know that we have that at the commission. I mean, especially after losing staff from like COVID and all of those kinds of things, that we are pretty short-staffed as it is with the amount of work that we have. So this bill, I think, or the position inside this bill would provide an opportunity for us to be able to spend the time to do exactly what Representative Pendergraph was talking about, to be able to dedicate the time, to be able to go find who the donors are, build those relationships and the rapport, partner with UW and the Veteran Services Center up here. There's a lot to be learned from the work that Mr. Martinez has done over the last years, right? So I think there's a lot to be done. The colleges, while they try really hard to support veterans, most of them don't have a lot of fundraising. And I'm gonna admit, I have not been asking how much fundraising they've been doing. So I really can't speak to that until I have a chance to go talk to them. We do know that some of them have support services, Sheridan College, one of them, right, that has as a benefactor that supports them, who also supports UW. So I do think there's things out there, but I also know that we have some community colleges where the only person that is available to support the veterans really that's dedicated to that is somebody who works in financial aid that's helping them with the GI Bill and whatever other funding sources there are for the veterans. It doesn't necessarily mean they have lots of other support services and things like that for the veterans. So while I think there's a great, they would like to, right? I mean, I think that it just doesn't exist at the moment at these high levels like you see at UW.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ballard. Any questions for Ms. Ballard in the Community College Commission? Okay. Yes. Co-Chairman Boner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just had a question revolving around the commission meetings themselves, that I guess the board that is the commission. What sort of veteran input does the Community College Commission receive? Do they seek it out? What do those meetings look like? It's my understanding that, say, at UW, Mr. Martinez is a regular at the Board of Trustees meetings. I think that has a lot of value. What's it look like on the community college side?
Ms. Ballard?
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Boner, okay, I've only been at like 3 commission meetings. So, and they haven't been the topic of discussion at those meetings. We've spent time looking at some of the other things in front of the community colleges and that kind of stuff. I haven't seen it, but I will say this about the commission. They are interested in knowing more than even what they're receiving now. They talk to us about that, about what the programs and things that the staff are doing and working on. They ask for more information about some of those. So I don't see it as something that they wouldn't want to hear about. I think they would be excited to hear about what's happening and the supports that they could provide.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for our panel that we have currently? Seeing none. Okay. Thank you guys very much for your input on this bill. We'll go ahead and open this up to public comment. Is there any public comment on this bill? Please come forward, fill the chairs. We'll take you from my left to your right, or from my left, your right to the opposite direction. How about that? That's a lot easier. If there's anybody else, please go ahead and fill these chairs. And we'll start over here. Welcome, sir. Please just turn on your mic, identify yourself, and let us hear your thoughts on this bill.
Hi, my name's Sean Moore. I'm a student veteran currently attending the University of Wyoming at Casper. I graduated from Casper College with my associate's degree, and I've been helping connect UW Casper with Casper College so we can fundraise and work together.
And it was Mr. Moore, you said, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for being here, Mr. Moore. Any questions for Mr. Moore? All right, so we do know it. We have at least one community college working on some fundraising, co-chairman.
Right, and so, Mr. Moore, could you just give us a little bit more detail about what that work looks like? And that's, gaining an appreciation of how, you have technically two separate entities at Casper College. You have UW Casper and Casper College. Each has its separate veterans program. And so just a little bit more information, because that's kind of a unique and interesting situation we got going on.
Mr. Moore, please.
So a lot of the work we're doing involves being both entities are involved with the Student Veterans of America. Casper College in 2022, I believe, was chapter of the finalist of the year. And so we were doing really good things. We brought in a veterans ball to help fundraise. I'm a suicide survivor, so we also offer in-house like mental health support for our students. Online, it's more of a trying to be an ear because a lot of our base at UW Casper's mostly online, and so it makes that work a little bit harder, but we're working around it. We're doing it. As liaison from UW Casper, our advisor, Rochelle Green, she talks a lot with Marty Martinez and Phil Young over at Casper College. And they just are an awesome dynamic and team. We learn a lot from UW. I feel like sometimes they learn a little bit from us sometimes. We're just all trying to assist the common good, and that's trying to tackle the student veterans and making sure they're heard. Because right now at Casper College, Phil Young is threatening to pull scholarships, funding delaying certification of students and our military affiliated students. So this having this position would be very beneficial, because whenever an administrator like that is basically holding over formal complaints and criticism, people's scholarships and education, that having this person in-house, it would help tremendously, because then that way it would also give them a little bit of power too, and making sure that the students are getting just whatever their education they're going for.
Appreciate that. Sounds like you guys have done a lot of legwork on the ground with little to no resources. So appreciate what you guys are doing there. It sounds, I'll just say tiring. So, any further questions for Mr. Moore? Seeing none, thank you. Please identify yourself.
Miss Jenna Chapin. I work for the Wyoming Military Department as a benefits supervisor.
If you want to bring the mic just a little, you can pick it up and move it.
Is that better, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman?
Thank you.
Miss Chapin, Jenna Chapin. I work for the Wyoming Military Department. I'm the benefits supervisor. My direct director is Deputy Shope. And I wanted to express my support for this bill to Mr. Chairman, co-chairman, and then to speak to Representative Pendergraph. I was also at that meeting that he was referencing with the Community College Commission. And as somebody who works directly with those individuals at the community college and UW, I just wanted to maybe shed some light on why this bill was important, this position was important, why it's important for it to be located in the Community College Commission and maybe not outsourced out to each individual community college, and would just like to give my input on that.
Okay. Do you want to expound upon that for us?
Yes. So I think that the University of Wyoming is really specific in that they serve a very large veteran population. Mr. Martinez does an awesome job at what he is able to do, what he's able to fundraise, but that's his position, that's his job, that's his role. Whereas the community colleges don't have a dedicated person in that position. Most of the time, the Veteran Services representative or the military liaison falls to the school certifying official from the VA, and that's a financial aid position. And so asking the SCOs, the VA school certifying officials to also have an additional fundraising role in addition to their full-time job would have been something that they are not able to do. And rather than add an additional position that would probably be part-time to each of these community colleges, having a position within the community college allows those resources to be better allocated. Like the University of Wyoming has more than 700 student veterans in their population, Eastern Wyoming Community College has probably fewer than 10. And so they don't need to dedicate the same time and resources to fundraising because they probably could utilize a lot less. But if their student population of veterans increases exponentially, right, they could have additional funds maybe that would be allocated towards them, or that could be fundraised for them. So knowing that, where then the University of Wyoming Casper College has a much larger student veteran population, has a much larger demographic that can benefit from this, but maybe still not quite enough to have a position in full there specifically. This particular position at the community college level would allow that coordination amongst all the community colleges, in addition to working with the University of Wyoming, without putting that undue pressure on the military financial aid representative, the school certifying officials, people who already have full-time jobs that can't just add a little bit of fundraising on the side when they also, right, have a bunch of other things that they do on a daily basis. And so this position, as a way to centralize that coordination at the community college level and the University of Wyoming level in the Community College Commission, I think will actually provide that value that you're looking to get with having that position be justified with the funding and with the benefit that it can provide.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chapin. Committee, any questions for Ms. Chapin? Yes, Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know if you're the right person to ask, so I'll try at this point. Justification for this position. How busy is this position going to be? What is their workload? What are they going to do? I mean, I think your point's well taken that, you know, it's going to centralize positions, probably a better way of handling it, but just how busy is this person going to be? Do you know? Do you have any estimations on their workload? What other duties they may be performing besides this duty, or it's just, I don't know enough about this to know what you're doing with this position. So could you, I guess, elaborate on that if you could? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Chapin, we'll make sure that, I certainly think you have an idea on the veteran side of things, but the position will actually not be housed with the veteran side of things. It'll be actually with the Community College Commission. So we may actually want to re-ask that question as well. But if you can shed some light on what the veterans across the state with community colleges look like, I think that would be helpful for us.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Senator Cole, Mr. Chairman is correct. I would not be directly involved in that position. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and with a little bit of my professional opinion thrown in there. As I work for the Wyoming Military Department, I'm assuming this will be someone that I work with directly. But that part of my desire to justify that intent is to show that even though it's not someone who works in my department, I would greatly value that it's in the Community College Commission because I feel like that's the best place for it. But I also can't speak to how that workload would look for them, what exactly they would do. I could hazard a guess, but certainly Dr. Ballard would be able to better speak to that. But I think that, like I said, having that more centralized position is really what's going to be beneficial in better allocating how each of the schools and the population of students can tie into how much time, effort, fundraising, job responsibilities, how that looks for that position and how it can best benefit all of the schools in a way that works for them.
Dr. Ballard, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't want to be gone for too long. This is a great question, Senator Cole. We don't intend it to be doing anything other than working on the veterans issues and support services and that kind of thing. We saw an opportunity here to do extensive collaboration between the community colleges, with UW, with the Department of Workforce Services, with the Veterans Commission. There's just a lot of folks that work in this arena that we think this position should be coordinating with and helping provide that coordination to provide additional services and supports to this community colleges and the veterans students at the community college. We also expect that we're doing a lot of grants and fundraising. There's going to be a pretty significant amount of grants management that the position will have to fulfill as well. Working with partners across the country as well. And then just kind of, what else do we put in here? We talked about the applying for and managing grants and other philanthropic efforts. And then certainly representing the commission on whatever various task force. It also increases and elevates it, going back to the question that I think Co-Chairman Boner asked me about with the commission. Right now we have a position that would be reporting out to the commission on Veterans Affairs.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ballard. Yes, all right, we'll start with Representative Pendergraft and then down to the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question would be for you, Dr. Ballard. Could you give us a little better picture of the community college commission as it is today? How many people we're talking about? How many positions exist there? Maybe just a little brief overview of that commission.
Dr. Ballard, that'd be great. Since this committee doesn't typically see the community college commission, I think that's really good information.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Pendergraft. There's a total of 12 of us all together. We have the executive director. I'm the chief academic and student services officer. So I work with the community colleges, academic affairs vice presidents, and the student services vice presidents. I also work with like their workforce staff and their library staff and lots of others. We have our chief financial officer. We have an accountant. We have our receptionist. We have a data analyst and our software tech type. I don't know how to describe him. He does a little bit of everything. We have our chief technology officer that oversees them as well. I oversee the adult education program that's funded between state and federal funds, and a program. One of the responsibilities my office has is to do the work with the commission on the approval of education programs being offered by the colleges. And so we have somebody that's dedicated to that work as well. And if I've missed somebody, I apologize, but that's just about it.
I was counting as you were doing that, and I think we're close, but I lost count. So is that good? Okay. Representative Stivar, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Ms. Fowler too. The $106,512. That's the amount that you guys have requested for that position. What is all that going to be used for?
Dr. Ballard, I think just the breakdown of that is, I think more specifically, I think that's a single year appropriation, but also that salary fringe, all that kind of thing. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I believe so. I think this is just salary and fringe for 1 year for the position.
So that would be for the committee's just knowledge, that's going to be probably close to 60% of that, 65% of that ish is the salary. And then beyond that is all of the retirement and everything else that comes into that. That's a rough estimation. And so, okay. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you all for your information and your input on this. Is there any further public testimony? All right. Don't have anybody online for this one, right? Okay. All right, committee, we will bring the bill back to the dais. What is the committee's pleasure on this bill? Bill has been moved by Senator Pappas,
Second.
and I have a second by Representative O'Hearn. Okay. Committee, let's work this bill, and we will do a roll call to see what the committee's discussion is once we roll through this. As we roll through here, I think the first thing is to look here whether or not we want to discuss this. The bill has technically been moved and seconded, so we will dispose of the staff comment. But the co-chairman and I were discussing this as well, that this also does directly fit with a budget request as opposed to a bill authorizing this and moving it forward. But any discussion on the staff comment beyond that? Mr. Co-chairman?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that is something that we need to seriously consider. You'll see that there's no new statute created, no amended statute. This is literally just a bill that does what normally a budget footnote would do. So I just bring that up and also, point out that, I think we haven't fully looked into what is possible in terms of fundraising, similar to what Mr. Martinez has done. And I think we heard some good testimony as far as the challenges with the Community College Commission. Those need to be taken seriously as well. But yeah, I think there's some things we need to talk about for sure, as far as whether this is the most appropriate vehicle to move forward or not. And just want to highlight that first staff comment. I think that's the first thing we should consider.
Okay. Yes, Senator Pappas, please.
I understand the good chairman's thoughts on there, but certainly if it ends up in a budget note, this can go away. I prefer to have two vehicles because certainly as it gets presented to the Appropriations Committee, they may do nothing with it. I just soon have this in our back pocket. Thank you.
Okay, committee, any other testimony? Representative Pendergraph first and then Senator Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to draw a little bit of a contrast between what happens in the life of a taxpayer and what happens typically in a government operation. When I got elected, I realized I was going to be doing a lot of driving, and the one vehicle that I had like 250,000 miles on it. And I said, I'm not really going to trust that out in the winter times on the highway. So I'm going to have a better, newer, lower mileage vehicle. And so I found one. I did not have the opportunity to come to this body or any other and ask for an appropriation to pay for that. I had to look at my own limited appropriation and decide what was going to cut out. I had to prioritize the allocations. What typically happens in a government program is we decide we want to do something and we just go add on. So we get bigger. And the discussion is never about, is there something in there that we are doing that maybe we could do without, or maybe we could readjust, maybe we could reset the allocations or priorities. We're dealing with the Community College Commission, which has limited resources, but they are dealing with community colleges and with the University of Wyoming, who have massive resources at their disposal. So my question, I'm going to be a no on this position flat out. My request is that these agencies that are involved with this, I completely support what this position would be doing and what he'd be doing. But I think if you start looking at all the other things that these agencies are doing, you could probably find somebody somewhere who could be employed better. And maybe some of the things that are being done now that don't need to be done could be dropped. You look at the Craig reports, you talk to Don Richards at LSO, and we know that the future isn't as bright as it's been in the past. This is not a time to keep expanding. This is a time to look seriously at what we have and reorganize our resources. So, thank you.
Representative Stibar. did you, or I'm sorry, Senator Kolb, I'm sorry.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd just like to elaborate on my position at this point is you're asking us to grow government. You're asking us to put another position on, and I haven't heard anything that I convinced that that's what we need to do. I'm not going to micromanage and can't micromanage what you do, but to ask for a $212,000 appropriation in a biennium is quite a bridge too far. I think that the position and what you're trying to do, I'm not adversarial of that. I think it sounds like that's the direction you think you should go because it's a thing to do to serve the people you're trying to serve. That's one question, but to come up here and ask for an appropriation from the group that is going to basically the fox running the hen house, want another hen in the hen house. I just don't, I'm not convinced that you can't do it internally. I think the easiest thing we can do in government is to add more folks and make something bigger, get another cubicle, add more people. That's the easy thing to do. I haven't heard enough about why we need to do this, though. That's why I didn't really have my question answered the first time I asked it. But to elaborate at this point that I didn't hear an answer. I didn't hear one that made any sense to me. I mean, I hear a lot of positions. Okay. But what are we doing to be efficient here? I mean, I am very adversarial just to throw more people aboard a train just because you're trying to accomplish a particular goal. And I mean, I appreciate what we're doing here, but I wouldn't have this position if you weren't asking for this money. And maybe you're going to say, well, I can't do it without the money. Well, then, okay. And those are my reasons why. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Committee, any further discussion? Let's go ahead and, oh, yes, Mr. Co-Chairman.
Well, if there's no other discussion, I do think that appreciate the testimony we heard. Certainly appreciate Senator Pops's perspective too. I think we do need some sort of vehicle moving forward because I mean, the reality is we did kind of try a budget footnote last time and it didn't go so well. And Representative Pendergraft is correct. I don't think we're going to even have the same resources at our disposal this upcoming supplemental budget as we did even a few months ago. So I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman, see what the committee thinks about maybe pushing this bill draft to the next committee meeting and also get another one going. So we have 3 or 4 horses potentially in the race. And I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss a different bill draft that would, at this point, Mr. Chairman, but maybe the idea would be to have an ex officio member of both the UW Board of Trustees as well as the Community College Commission that's representing the veterans community, potentially nominated by whoever's in Mr. Shepherd's position, and have that be an additional vehicle to make sure that we solidify basically the status quo with UW and then also translate that to the Community College Commission. Obviously not a full-time position, maybe have some per diem in there or something like that. But I think that'd be a more efficient way forward, and also potentially challenge the community colleges and Mr. Martinez to sit down and talk about what else do you need from us? Do we need to further define how this relationship is going to work? And also what's it going to take to fundraise to get to where we need to go with the Community College Commission? So 3 things there, maybe, if hopefully that's clear, Mr. Chairman, but I think that we are dealing with a new reality with our budget, and maybe this vehicle is not the only one we should have in the race.
Okay. Committee, anything further before we roll forward here? Okay, so co-chairman is correct, but we do have a motion and a second on the table. So parliamentary procedure, what we need to do is dispose of that motion on the table. But what I will say before we go there, I think looking at this on a global scale, at least in my opinion, I will probably be an aye vote. We'll see how the motion to move this bill forward continues and whatnot. But the reason I will be an aye vote on this, and I don't disagree that we could probably find a place to do some fundraising. The problem is the uniqueness of our landscape in the state of Wyoming, having 8 different community colleges, all doing it differently and all doing different levels of veteran support. And when we're talking about those different levels of veteran support, we are talking about different levels of fundraising opportunities in those particular areas as well. Laramie County Community College, they have a staff of 2 people for fundraising and doing direct fundraising efforts, and that's their entire job. Most of those fundraising efforts are to support scholarships, not to fund a position to go out and look for more money. So I can actually tell you, I know exactly that those 2 positions do not do that, right? So I also have a distinct belief that if we were to authorize this position with no money attached to it, and we were to try to ask the public to write a check to the government to fund a government position, we're going to get laughed out of the room. So I'm personally going to be an aye vote on this as we roll forward. Not so much in the fact that I like growing government, but I do see the value in this and to our veterans and those that we are trying to work. And we've heard very solid testimony on what this one position that was able to be fundraised for here at the university with 700 plus students. We may not even equal quite that many across the entire state with the rest of the community colleges. So this one position seems to me that it would be a very unique opportunity for us to actually fund outside of this. I will also be a pragmatist and understand this bill likely does not stand a chance anywhere as we move forward with an appropriation attached to it as we go forward into the next budget session or into this next session. So I do have Representative Obermueller has his hand up. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think your last comment kind of summarizes where my no vote on this is going to come from. It's not that I don't think this is a good idea. It's that I don't think that this committee is the right vehicle for that, because this committee isn't schooled in the inner workings, the budgeting and all the money involved in the commission itself. So we are expending money, in an arena where haven't developed any expertise. So you project that onto the floor of the House where somebody from this committee gets up and tries to defend this bill, and they're ignorant about how the finances of the commission work. That's a real problem. So I'll be a no. Thank you.
Actually, very well put, and may have actually just potentially changed my vote. So committee, at this point, is there any further discussion? We do have a motion. Yes, Representative Wiley.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also think if this fails here, but we move on to another bill draft or something for our last meeting, maybe show how regionalizing this and saving money from not growing positions and all the separate community colleges could be beneficial to not only the committee, but wherever this moves forward. I think looking at things that way and presenting it that way is going to be helpful for the future.
Okay. Anybody who hasn't talked want to talk? Seeing none. Do we want to go ahead and continue with this and do the roll call vote? Is that's the motion in the second? Still comfortable with that? Okay. With that, can we please get a roll call on 25 LSO 79?
This is a roll call vote for 25 LSO 79 Community College Commission Veteran Services position to sponsor it. Senator Brennan. Aye. Senator Furphy.
No.
Senator Kolb.
No.
Senator Pappas.
Aye.
Representative Berger.
No.
Representative Nemec. Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
No.
Representative Pendergraft.
No.
Representative Smith.
No.
Representative Stivar.
No.
Representative Wiley.
No.
Co-chairman Boner.
No.
Chairman Brown.
All in the spirit of feeling good, I'll vote aye.
Four aye, 10 no.
All right, committee, that bill does fail this particular area. I'm going to open this discussion up for any additional movement forward. I will also caution the committee, our next meeting is a one-day meeting. We are shorted one full day of work. So whatever we do bring forward out of today and tomorrow and move forward to the next committee meeting needs to be completely cleaned up and ready to roll. So is there any further motions or discussion? Mr. Co-Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I move that we get a bill draft going for our next meeting that would direct that the director of the State Veterans Commission appoint an ex officio member of the UW Board of Trustees that is representing the veteran community. And also that same director appoint an ex officio member of the Community College Commission who does the same thing. We'll do that for now. And if we want to add any additional provisions to the motion right now, that's fine. I'm open to any amendments, any ideas the committee has. But I think either way, I'm still really interested in understanding what role we can, what the path is moving forward to help the community colleges to make sure that we clarify whose role is, who's staying in which lane and so on. But we want to make sure that we are talking between all of our higher education entities. But that's something I think we haven't quite figured it out just yet. That's something I'd make the commitment to you, Mr. Chairman, that I would personally take care of before our next meeting, talking with both UW and the community colleges to include, I still think there's merit in having a position at the community college position, but clearly it needs to follow the UW model where we look at private donors first. And so that's my motion and a little bit of explanation there.
Okay, that's a motion. Seconded by Senator Kolb. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay, that motion passes. We will see that bill at our next meeting. All right, committee, that puts us into our next bill. We have 25 LSO 80, the ROTC Endowment Program. And Ms. Hanson, you have been busy writing bills.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 80 version 0.6 ROTC Endowment Program. This bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting, and I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 begins on page 2. Subsection A on page 2, lines 12 through 14 creates the University of Wyoming ROTC Endowment Fund. Subsection B on page 2, lines 16 through 23, and page 3, lines 1 through 6 creates the University of Wyoming ROTC Income Account. Subsection C on page 3, lines 8 through 11 provides that any accrued interest and other earnings on unexpended funds shall be credited to the income account. Subsection D on page 3, lines 13 through 19 provides that any unexpended, unobligated funds remaining in the income account on June 30th of each fiscal year shall be credited to the endowment fund not later than 90 days after the end of the fiscal year. Subsection E, starting on page 3, line 21 to page 4, line 19, requires the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees to ensure that all available amounts deposited in the income account are distributed to the University of Wyoming's ROT programs for expenditure, not account for any amounts distributed to the university's ROTC programs when developing the budget request, and not decrease any amount from the university's biannual budget that is budgeted or allocated to the ROTC programs based on the amounts that the programs receive under the endowment. Page 4, lines 21 through 23, and page 5, lines 1 through 3 require the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees to report to this committee and JAC on the development and implementation of the University of Wyoming's ROTC programs budget not later than December 1st of each year. Subsection A on page 5, lines 9 through 23, and page 6, 1 through 17 outline how the University of Wyoming's ROTC program shall use the funds received from the endowment. The ROTC program shall use the funds for academic programs that support the military, including general military courses, officer courses, military science studies and aerospace studies, tactical laboratory programs, including field training, instructional and resource materials, classroom equipment, and other resources necessary to support the work of the ROTC programs, recruitment and retention of students, recruitment and retention of faculty, and financial aid for students in the ROTC programs, including scholarships, grants, and tuition assistance. Page 6, subsection B, lines 19 through 23, and page 7, lines 1 through 3 requires the ROTC programs to seek recommendations for proposed expenditures from this committee and JAC before expending those funds annually distributed. The staff comment on page 7 highlights that the committee may wish to consider whether the ROTC programs or the Board of Trustees should seek the recommendations for proposed expenditures. Page 7, lines 18 through 27, and page 8, lines 1 through 9 require the ROTC programs to report to the governor, JAC, and this committee on the investment use and expenditure of funds and investment earnings from the endowment fund and the income account, including the list of expenditures divided by each purpose. Page 8, lines 20 through 23, and page 9, lines 1 through 6 provides a conforming amendment to add the ROTC endowment fund to the list of other permanent funds. Page 9, lines 20 through 22 provides a conforming amendment to add the ROTC endowment fund to the definition of permanent funds. Section 3 on page 10, lines 1 through 9 provides an appropriation from the general fund to the ROTC endowment fund, beginning with the effective date of this act. The staff comment on page 10 states that the committee will need to determine the appropriation amount to the endowment fund. Section 4 on page 10, line 19 provides an effective date of July 1st, 2025. The staff comment on the bottom of page 10 highlights that this bill draft would be required to pass both houses by a 2/3 vote pursuant to the Wyoming Constitution, and I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, committee, this is a very standard boilerplate-ish, if you will, endowment piece of legislation. Any commission or any committee questions for Ms. Hanson? All right, seeing, oh, yes, please.
Thank you,
Go,
Mr. Chairman. Just a little bit more discussion on the constitutional provisions. Can you just maybe go over what those provisions are? And if possible, just point out what exactly part of the bill require that 2/3 majority. That'd be helpful.
Ms.
Oh.
Hanson?
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Boner, the part of the Constitution that require the 2/3 vote is Article 16, Section 6A to B, which states that neither the state nor any county, city, township, town, school district, or any other political division shall subscribe to or become the owner of capital stock of any association or corporation except that the legislature may provide by law for the investment of funds. So it's the investment of funds part that would require the 2/3 vote of both houses.
Follow up?
Okay, so just to make sure I understand it, because this is, learn something every day in this job. It's so say if we set up the permanent marital trust fund, I imagine that required 2/3 support back when that was established. So every time we set up a new fund that it generates or invests in stock and generates a return, that's the requirement that's the reason why the requirement's there. Every time we set up a separate account that invests in funds, that's the need then.
Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Boner, yes, the Constitution continues on just saying that anytime you're establishing or increasing the percentage of any fund that may be invested has to be passed by the 2/3 vote of both houses.
Good question from the co-chairman there. Again, learn something new every day. I don't know that I had seen that before. So any other questions? Seeing none, I believe what we have up next is the Wyoming Military Department. Is that right? I sifted down here. No, I've got Air Force ROTC and the Army ROTC and the university. Yep, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I'm sitting down, I realize I never identified myself for the record for the last bill, and I apologize for that. Mike Smith with the University of Wyoming. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to join the two colonels here on the dais. I thought most efficiently, we've worked very closely together in assembling our comments that I provided. I'd just kind of give a quick summary of the UW comments on the bill. The last piece of this is the one that the colonels kind of compiled as far as what they would see as the priorities for such a program if it were to be created. And just given some of the discussion from the last bill, I just want to make clear, I know, Mr. Chairman, you and the co-chair are well aware of this, but in all three of these bills cases, these are not bills that the university or Community College got together and prepared and proposed to the committee. This was drafts the committee directed LSO to take a look at after the testimony from the last time. So not happy to do whatever this committee and the legislature instructs us to do, and we'll do our very best at whatever that is. And just want to say we're just trying to offer some comments and for your consideration as policymakers on the best way to go forward. Thank you. Real quickly, walking through the bill. If you look at page 3, lines 1 through 9, the bill's set up so that the expenditures from the fund will be 100% of those prior year's investment earnings, and that's certainly an appropriate way to go. That happens in other funds across the state. Just for your consideration to think about, that can lead to quite an up and down year to year kind of approach to things, and another approach would be to make this endowment fund subject to the spending policy, spin off 5% of the average of those last 5 years or so, so that you get a really good investment year, but your budgeting amount is you kind of know what to plan on. So that was something we just wanted to flag. The second comment on page 5, line 22, you'll note that one of the priorities the two gentlemen to my left identified relate to physical training, either equipment or ensuring that there are facilities that match the kind of testing and training they're required to put their teams through. And so just a suggestion that we add physical training after classroom on line 22, page 5, to make that an allowable piece if it's not included in the kind of broad list already there, which maybe it is. Next on page 6, well, this is a broad comment over several pages, but there's a lot of reporting in the bill, and I just asked to take a look at the efficiencies of that. The bill as drafted would require this team to come before this committee and JAC every summer, and well, I have to think about the timing of that. At some point before the fiscal year begins, to say, hey, what are your thoughts on how we ought to be spending this money? This is how we are thinking. And conceptually, I don't have a problem with that. Obviously, we would do that constantly with this committee and others. So, but putting it in the statute and requiring that kind of, it doesn't say you all would direct, it just says we would seek recommendations. So, I mean, again, not saying, any of this stuff is do or die. It just would consider kind of taking a look, and maybe we could consolidate that kind of discussion with the annual budget discussion that will occur either way, seeking the reporting backwards. We're required in this bill to report backwards. Here's what we did. If there were a way to combine that with the looking forward report too, it would just make things a lot more efficient. And finally, and I'll defer to these folks for questions on this, but I just want to run through the amount on page 10 in section 3. So there were 3 main priorities identified at this time that the programs would focus on if this money was available. The first was $65,000 for physical training and fitness equipment, specific to some of those unique tests we talked about earlier. There is a reduction coming from the Department of Defense, and again, these two folks are experts and can give you more detail on this. But the USDOD is reducing the scholarship support for their ROTC programs. And UW is stepping in with some block grant dollars to try to offset that. We are not offsetting the entire reduction, but we are offsetting a good chunk of that this year. And they would prefer to use some of the money if there were an endowment created for that purpose to ensure a steady stream of scholarships. And finally, to help with recruiting and getting the word out on the program, they would like to have a digital manager to bolster those efforts. Totally cognizant of the discussion about the position for the last bill, but looking across the university, we identified a similar position that some of the colleges have for that salary range there. I put 47,000 to 64,000. That does not include the benefit piece, so add another 30% on for a normal position. And then I included, this is just my back of the napkin, that a 10 million endowment with a 5% spending policy would spin off the kind of high end of the dollars identified here. That's all I have from the university side, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any questions or comments for Mr. Smith? I guess we don't really do comments, but co-chairman?
Questions or comments and former questions, absolutely. But yeah, thank you, Mr. Smith. And just a reminder, I was going through the information UW provided last meeting. It looks like currently the budget is just a little south of $300,000 between two programs in terms of the block grant. Is that correct?
Sir, Lieutenant Colonel Paul Hansen, Army ROTC, University of Wyoming. So the block grant this year is just over 123,000 from the university. That was down, I think, from what I gave you last term in June. Last year's block grant, I think, was around 137,000.
So biennialized,
right?
270.
Gotcha. Is there additional support for scholarships too, in addition to the positions that UW provides?
Mr. Chairman, so for the university, in addition to that, they provide the university liaison that's in both of our offices. And then the space and the facilities that we use already. Other than that, the rest of the scholarship money would be a DoD scholarship fund where it comes from, Mr. Chairman.
Follow. Good. Okay. Anything further? Okay. Colonels, please introduce yourself. If you guys have anything further to bring forward for us today.
Good morning, Chairman Brown, Chairman Bonner. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Cove, the new Air Force Commander for the ROTC detachment at University of Wyoming. This is my first time appearing before the committee, but I was actually at the previous committee hearing at Rock Springs. That was my first day, so it's great to see everyone again. And I appreciate you inviting us here to advocate on behalf of this bill. I have no further inputs.
Mr. Chairman, committee, thanks for having us again today. Sir, I don't have any other comments as well. Mr. Smith has provided a good rundown of the data that Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Cove and I put together. So pending your questions, we're happy to be here.
Okay. Co-chairman, get some questions. Anybody else? All right, co-chairman, you're up.
Okay, cool. So just a little bit more information about how these programs work. I know almost all the positions are your active duty military, your salaries are paid by the Department of Defense. And so we got, I think, a good understanding of how UW contributes to the program. Could you talk a little bit about how many federal personnel you have as part of your programs? And also, where's all that tuition money go? Does that go to the Department of Defense, or does that go to the University of Wyoming when somebody takes an ROTC class? It'd be helpful to understand that too.
Either one of the two colonels there.
Chairman Bonner. So as it relates to my staff, I currently have, including myself, 5 active duty Air Force personnel paid for by the Department of Defense. And I believe your other question is relating to the scholarship funding and where that money goes. Is that correct?
No. So when somebody takes and you teach, undergraduate classes, right, much as any other college professor, and students pay tuition to take the class. I'm just verifying that that tuition payment is treated the same as if they take a poli-sci class or a Spanish class. Does that go to the university, or do those students somehow get rerouted to the Department of Defense?
Yes, sir, I understand now. Thank you for the clarification. So the money, it's federal money, goes directly to the University of Wyoming from the Air Force side.
Mr. Chairman, for the Army, I have 6 active duty personnel. I have 3 Department of the Army civilians and then 1 university liaison. And then the same, every class that we teach that goes to the University of Wyoming.
Committee, any questions for the panel? Seeing none, looks like that's you guys got off pretty easy. Appreciate the detailed comments that you guys all put together. And oh, you do have a further, yes.
Yeah, probably for Mr. Smith. One question I had with the bill is, it seems like we're kind of assuming that, these will be distributed between the 2 programs. And I'm just wondering, as if they're the same program, and that I would argue that they're not necessarily. There's some distinction there between Army program and the Air Force program. I'm wondering, if this bill draft, would there be any benefit to sort of specifying exactly how those funds are distributed between the 2 programs? That's something we're just going to trust the university and the 2 programs to figure out, or should there, absent some sort of agreement, should there be some provision for distributing on a per student basis or something
Yeah.
like that?
Great question, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, great question. I hadn't given a lot of thought. Of course, you give me the choice, I'll always accept the greater amount of flexibility than not. And I'm sure there are a lot of good reasons, enrollment among them year to year, maybe one program grows, one doesn't. So I'll defer to these folks, but we certainly wouldn't, be opposed to working with you on how to do that. I think from the university side, they're a program in this. We know there are 2 programs, but we operate similarly from our side. We have an MOU with both branches that lay out each's responsibility. We have those students come in, we provide that liaison for them both, we provide the same space for them both. And as soon as I say something broad like that, one of these guys will go, no, not exactly. So I'll just defer to them, but happy to handle it however you think is best.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Co-Chairman, so Brett and I typically split the block grant based on the size of our program. So it'll move every year. That's a wonderful professional discussion that we have that benefits the program. So that's what we're looking for, not to retain a certain amount of money just because it's so that the officers that we're producing are provided what they need for their education.
Okay, good. Senator, I almost put you over in the sleepy pad over there. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Mr. Smith from the UW. I'm just wondering that to start this endowment, couldn't we just redirect funds from the university that's already out there and start this endowment instead of taking it out of the general fund?
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stivar, absolutely. I'm sure you could do that.
I think somebody knew the answer to their own question. Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How many are in each of your programs, ROTC, and are they getting larger or better? Or can you tell us a little bit about the programs and if they're going in the right direction? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative O'Hearn, so 56 cadets in the Army ROTC program currently. As we briefed in June to the committee, that's lower than my 10-year average, that being around 109 cadets on an annual basis. And there were some reasons that we discussed here, but I see that trend not going any further down. I'll grow the program back up within the next couple of years.
Committee, anything further? Yes, please.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I may. Similar on the Air Force side, currently last I checked, 40 Air Force cadets. That is below our historic baseline by about 15 to 20. Our commissioning size last spring was 2 cadets. which is down from a typical class of 5 to 6 pre-COVID. So part of the hope of this bill is that it can increase our capacity to compete nationwide to bring that talent to University of Wyoming. That's all I have, sir.
Just a question from me. What type of recruiting efforts do you guys do statewide at the high school level for your ROTC efforts? Is that one of, you said you have 5, and I can't remember what you said, but is that one of your staff members' sole purposes is to go out and recruit at the high school level?
Mr. Chairman, thanks. So it'd be a different answer from Brett, as we're similar, but we're a little different. So I have a Department of the Army civilian, and that position is called a recruiting operations officer position, generally specific to most, if not all, host Army ROTC programs. So his job for me, sir, is recruiting through and through. And how he does that is he competes nationally with the National High School Scholarship Board, and then certainly regionally, and then within the state with mostly the junior ROTC programs that I have a requirement to support. But it's broad. From the nationwide, we've got quite a few students, almost a third are probably from out of the state at any given year. So we'll look generally wherever the candidate is coming from that fits the requirements for the program.
Chairman Brown, I have a fantastic active duty captain, Captain Heffley, who is my full-time recruiting officer on top of being a assistant professor of space studies at the university here. But he's responsible for the geographic region of the entire state of Wyoming, and also does virtual events nationwide.
Thank you. Okay, committee, any further questions? Seeing none. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you. That brings us open to public testimony. Any public testimony on this particular bill? And I know we don't have anybody on this one. I remember that one. Okay, committee, let's go ahead and bring the bill back to the dais. What's the committee's pleasure? Moved by Co-Chairman Boner. Seconded by Representative O'Hearn. All right, committee, let's, this bill is pretty straightforward. However, I think the biggest portion that we need to have a discussion on more than anything is the appropriation amount. So let's actually just jump to that first, and let's get a recommendation on a page 10, the appropriated amount. Let's get a motion for an amendment on that. Senator Cole.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Page 10, line 1. After appropriation, insert $1. That is my amendment.
Okay, been moved and seconded by Representative Stivar. Any discussion? Representative Pendergraft, and then we'll come to the co-chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments are not related to the value relative merits of the ROTC, but rather to the funding mechanism. It is the responsibility of the legislature when times get hard to prioritize and allocate our resources among what we have. This has kind of been a theme. Every time we start one of these endowment funds, we start another coffee can. We tie our hands to being able to change the priorities given a tight budget. Then we're left with only one option, and that is to raise taxes because we're unable to cut spending. I'm all for the ROTC. There's no way I'll ever vote for another coffee can.
Okay. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with my colleague here, Mr. Pendergraft. I'd like to know if we could actually do what I suggested and bring something that's already there and start the endowment. And that's where it gets filled at. That way we're not raising taxes. We're not adding a new coffee can. Well, we're going to add a new coffee can, but the funding has already been allocated somewhere else.
Okay. Committee, anything further? Mr. Representative Pendergraft, I've already gone to you, so I'm going to come back to the co-chairman.
You can follow this.
Okay. All right. Representative Pendergraft, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. regarding the idea put there, I'd still be opposed to that because we still create an endowment. And that's the sticking point. I don't want another coffee can. If a program is worth funding, send in a request for an appropriation and it will or will not be appropriated to fund that. This idea of putting us on autopilot with an endowment out there that we can't touch, I'm not going to go there.
Okay, Mr. Co-Chairman, bring us home.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the motion itself, to put $1
Thank you.
On the, to fill as basically as a space holder, I guess you could say. I think that's appropriate. The reality is that no matter what we put in there, it's going to get changed. I understand the hesitation on the committee with, if I could just address some of the discussion too. I understand the hesitation with coffee cans. I'd point out that this may be a little bit different because we are dealing with an entity in the University of Wyoming that currently functions under a block grant where there's very little legislative direction and or basically no control at all. And maybe that'll be changing sooner rather than later. But as it stands now, this is an opportunity to highlight the land grant portion of the university's mission. It's an opportunity to provide some direction where currently there is none. At the university with the hundreds of millions of dollars that we provide every year to this institution. So just want to acknowledge that. And I think that, we have to stay on the motion now, which is put $1 in, which I hope all of us, good, for the amendment, I hope all of us good fiscal conservatives can support that as opposed to 10 million. Then we have a separate discussion about where it comes from, whether it's from the existing appropriation for the university or whether this is a new expenditure, one-time expenditure of general funds. But for now on, in support of this amendment, then we can have, I think, a more detailed discussion about prioritizing the current allocations.
Committee, any further discussion on the proposed amendment for $1 as a placeholder? Seeing none. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. Sorry, Representative Berger, I was a little ahead of you there. We got your eye, though. All right, committee, back to the bill. We need to discuss a few more of the staff comments as we roll through this. Just rolled right past it. The staff comment on page 7, I think, is pertinent. And I do believe that this is also a discussion that was broached lightly with Mr. Smith's comments on whether we want this to be directed by the legislature or whether we want this to be the Board of Trustees having discretion of this. So page 7. Yep, Mr. Co-Chairman.
I think, paragraph B on page 6, line 19, all the way to page 7, line 3. I think that's something that stuck out to me too as being unusual. I'm not sure if they need to come to the legislature every time to ask for guidance. There could be a potential separation of powers issue there. And I'm unaware of any other circumstance where we do that. Short of setting up an entire select committee like Select Water, where we have this sort of interaction between legislature and the executive branch, I think maybe I'll just go ahead and move to strike paragraph B there. Lines or page 6, line 19 to page 7, line 3.
Okay. Committee, the motion has been made by Co-Chairman Boner, seconded by Pappas to strike paragraph B, line 6, and to page 7. Striking that language. Any discussion? Saying none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, no. Rowdy bunch you guys are. That motion passes with like 2 votes. All right. Following up, the last piece here is actually, that was just the 2/3 vote. So committee, any open discussion on the bill as presented as amended?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Co-Chairman.
We had some good discussion previously about whether this is going to be just a general fund appropriation or whether it be taken from the UW block grant. And so I'll offer that amendment for purpose of discussion, that it would be appropriated from the current block grant for the current biennium instead of the general fund.
Seconded by, we'll give that one to Senator Brennan. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? No? Okay, I'm going to call for a show of hands on that. I feel like there might have been a few more no's that just didn't say anything. So all those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Okay, that passes. Thank you. And let's try to perk up just a little bit. I know we took an early break here, folks, but let's try to be clear here. All right, so that amendment passes. That would come directly out of the block grant from the university. Any further amendments or discussion? Mr. Co-Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to urge the committee to move this bill forward. I think that it's important not just to support the military mission of the land grant, our only land grant university, but I think it's could be part of the discussion as we have a broader look at how the legislature interacts with the University of Wyoming. We've done similar efforts with the College of Agriculture, and just, one method moving forward is to support the elements of the university that have broad support throughout the state, that I think certainly align with our values and are very much in line with the land grant mission, which is why we have the university to begin with. So certainly understand that this is going to be a part of a broader discussion, and there's lots of value in simply directing the university to expend more funds, potentially through a budget footnote. That's another way of doing it. But this, I think we need to also forward this for consideration to the session, because this could be another way of bolstering what is always been the mission of the university. It's not a passing thing. This is why the university exists. It's partially to support military sciences in addition to agriculture and engineering. So I think that necessitates, or that would justify an endowment, because that's the reason why the university has been here and will always be here. So that's my pitch.
Representative Berger.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to say how much I do support these endowments and the works of previous legislatures, because I can speak to it personally and through my family, not for any other reasons, but my family, we have taken advantage of these extra endowments, whether it's the Hathaway Scholarship or the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship. Those things, the commitment by previous legislations or legislatures are well noted, and it has kept my family in Wyoming. And that's why we love Wyoming so much, because they have put those efforts into the people of Wyoming. Another note, I have never seen my taxes go up because of these endowments. I have seen my property taxes rise because of inflationary needs. But one thing I appreciate from our previous legislatures, and even the one that we are currently in, that I don't remember raising any taxes anywhere, and asking to raise income taxes or start a state income tax. I've never seen that. I haven't seen it personally. So I appreciate those efforts by those previous legislatures, and I'm proud to say, yeah, I would support this 100% because of what it does personally and for a family. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Committee, any further discussion? I will only say, as my last comments here, I appreciate the co-chairman's comments on this. I will probably be a no vote on this, and my main reason for it is actually a branch off of what our previous speaker just said. Is we have set up endowments to help the people of Wyoming. in the past. And what's going to end up happening with this process is these people are going to become citizens of Wyoming for 4 years, and they're going to enter the active duty Air Force or Army, and they're going to be shipped out, and they're going to go across the world potentially. And then they're going to come back here and retire here. And that's good for us to have retirees come up. But at the end of the day, I would like to keep the money focused on Wyoming people and keep the money focused on Wyoming talent and Wyoming citizens, not bringing in that money and having those people take off on us. I don't have anything against other people coming here and spending 4 years, but that'd be my comment. So. Sure, General.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Craig Porter. I'm the 27th Adjutant General for the state of Wyoming. I would just like to address, I happen to be a product of the ROTC program at the University of Wyoming, and I'm in favor of all things that help do that. I will say we are dependent, particularly on the Army Guard side, for the officers we get out of the Reserve Officer or training program. Like I said, I'm one of them. I believe we'll probably get about 8 this year if things go correct and stay in Wyoming. So I will just tell you that particularly on the Army side, we devote at least 1 man year to the University of Wyoming out of our full-time resources to assist with this program. We've invested in it. It's important to us, and anything that we can do to help, to just personally being a product from it, I'm in favor of. Whether this is the right mechanism, I'm agnostic, and I would certainly like to continue to develop that and make these programs as good as they can be. I can stand ready for your questions.
General, I appreciate the serving of crow. Committee, any further? All right. Without that, Eve, would you please call roll call on 25 LSO 0080 as amended?
This is a roll call vote to sponsor 25 LSO 0080 ROTC Endowment Program as amended. Senator Brennan. Senator Furphy.
Aye.
Senator Kolb.
Aye.
Senator Pappas. Representative Berger.
Aye.
Representative Nemec.
No.
Representative O'Hearn.
Aye.
Representative Obermueller.
No.
Representative Pendergraft.
No.
Representative Smith.
No.
Representative Stivar.
Aye.
Representative Wiley.
No.
Co-Chairman Boner.
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
Nine aye, 5 no.
Ready? That passes this. It will need a substantially larger poll in session as we move forward to get brought forward. With that being said, committee doing okay? You guys were a little tired there in that bill draft. Just want to make sure everybody's awake. Okay, we're going to move on forward here. Let's keep on rolling. 25 LSO 0083, Wyoming's Investment in Veterans Mental Health. Ms. Hanson, yet again, we have a bill draft from you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Talise Hanson, Staff Attorney LSO, presenting Bill Draft 25 LSO 83, version 0.5, Wyoming's Investment in Veterans Mental Health. This bill draft was requested at the committee's June meeting to create an incentive program for veterans at the University of Wyoming. And I'll start by walking through the bill draft. Section 1 starts on page 1, line 10, by creating Wyoming Statute 2116-2001. Subsection A on page 2, lines 6 and 7, creates the Wyoming Veteran Loan Repayment Program, which is administered by the University of Wyoming. Subsection B on page 2, lines 9 through 23, and page 3, line 2, outlines the eligibility requirements to qualify for a loan under this loan repayment program. The requirements are that an applicant must be a United States citizen or permanent resident, be a veteran, be enrolled in good standing in a social work program, a counseling program, or a psychology program at the University of Wyoming, leading to a bachelor's degree or master's degree. The staff comment on page 3 states that the committee may wish to consider whether to extend the qualifying programs to programs at Wyoming community colleges. Subsection C on page 3, lines 13 through 17 provides that subject to the availability of funds appropriated for this program, loans may be granted to qualified applicants to pay the cost of attendance for the academic programs listed in subsection B. Subsection D on page 3, lines 19 through 22 provides that a loan shall not exceed the cost of attendance for a qualifying program reduced by the amount of any federal grant and any employer-based financial assistance received by the applicant. The staff comment on the bottom of page 3 provides that the committee may wish to consider how this loan repayment program may interact with any GI Bill benefits and whether to reduce the loan by the amount of any other state grants. Subsection E on page 4, lines 7 through 15 provides that a recipient of a loan may repay the loan without monetary payment by working at least blank % of his working hours providing mental health services within the state to veterans. Subsection E further provides that to qualify for the loan repayment under this program, the work must be performed within the minimum amount of time necessary to repay the loan plus blank years, which begins with the calendar month following the month in which the student completed the program. The staff comment on the bottom of page 4 states that the committee will need to determine the percentage of the working hours that a recipient must provide mental health services within the state to veterans and the additional number of years a recipient of a loan is required to work for loan repayment. The staff comment also notes that the committee may wish to consider whether to change the work requirement, and staff comment provides examples of other loan repayment programs. Subsection F, paragraph 1 on page 5, lines 23 through 29 provides that any recipient of a loan who fails to complete the academic program for which the loan was provided shall commence monetary payment of the loan not later than 45 days after the recipient leaves the academic program. The staff comment on the bottom of page 5 states that the committee may wish to consider allowing a recipient of a loan who starts an academic program but takes some time off and then returns to the program to defer the loan repayment for a period of time. Subsection F, paragraph 2 on page 6, lines 7 through 12 provides that any recipient of a loan who fails to obtain employment that provides mental health services within the state to veterans within 240 days after completing the program shall commence monetary repayment of the loan within 285 days. Subsection G on page 6, lines 14 through 18 provides that the loan repayment options may be deferred up to 5 years while a recipient is serving on full-time active duty in the armed forces, the Army National Guard, or Air National Guard. The staff comment on the bottom of page 6 highlights that the committee may wish to consider whether to include persons serving in the uniformed services. Subsection H on page 7, lines 1 through 20 grants the University of Wyoming the powers to implement this program and establish terms and conditions of the loans, including the interest rates and loan terms, the application process, criteria for loan repayment, and the criteria for determining the cost of attendance. Subsection J on page 7, lines 22 and 23 provides that funding of the loan repayment program shall be by appropriation of the legislature. Subsection K on page 8, lines 2 and 3 provides that the repayment of loans and interest thereon shall be credited to the school foundation program account. Subsection M on page 8, lines 5 through 11 requires the University of Wyoming to annually review the loan program and report to the governor and the legislature. The staff comment on page 8 highlights that the committee may wish to consider whether to add a sunset date to the loan repayment program. Subsection N on page 8, lines 21 through 25 provides a definition of veteran to mean any person who served in the United States Armed Forces, the Army National Guard, or Air National Guard, and who is discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable. The staff comment on page 9 provides that the committee may wish to consider whether to include a person who has served in the uniformed services to the definition of veteran. Section 2 begins on page 9, line 32, subsection A on page 9, lines 34 through 38, and page 10, lines 1 through 7 provides a blank appropriation amount from the blank account to the University of Wyoming for the period beginning July 1st, 2026 and ending June 30th, 2026. Subsection B on page 10, lines 9 through 14 provides that not more than blank % of the amount appropriated shall be used by the University of Wyoming for administrative costs. The staff comment on the bottom of page 10 provides that the committee will need to determine the appropriation amount, how to fund the appropriation amount, meaning That's from the general fund or some other fund, including the school foundation program account, and the percentage amount for administrative expenses. Section 3 on page 11, lines 1 through 4 provides an immediate effective date, and I'll stand for any questions.
Committee, any questions for Ms. Hanson? Seeing none, thank you, Ms. Hanson. Appreciate that. And we're just going to go right on down the line here. We will start out with the governor's office. Even though we don't have you on our agenda, I'm kind of shocked, but welcome, Ms. Davis. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. My name is Jen Davis. I am the Governor's Health and Human Service Policy Advisor, and I am going to defer to my colleagues here for starting off the conversation, and then step in when they're ready for me.
All right, sounds great. General?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you again for all the work that's been done in trying to get after the veterans' suicide and mental health. Just as a refresher for all of us, when we took a look at this, we were really trying to find about some ways of how we can get after one of the most significant threats to our veterans and really our civilians in Wyoming, since Wyoming tends to be certainly the top 3 of most people's assessment of suicides. It's a significant problem that we're trying to get after. We've been after a couple of different things. We went after veterans talking to veterans. We thought that was a good deal. Mr. Smith briefed that to you this morning. I believe we have a good plan on that, and we can continue to drive forward. The second thing we came up is the draft bill 83, which we're going to talk to after lunch, which get after some firearm liabilities. If we go back and remember our discussion, we were really trying to figure out how do we really move the ball in this, though. What we do that can really have some effect across the state in terms of reducing suicides. And we kept it, as the committee did. I think there was some discussion we had that, hey, listen, maybe this isn't our task to tackle, that this is maybe another committee's piece of this. We kept it to veterans to keep it in our committee here, but I think it is worth consideration as we go forward on where that goes. As you can see in our slide deck, we recommended that we explore some more time with this thing. And I know that's not seen, well, I suspect it's not seen favorably by the committee given the short amount of time we have, but there is a lot of work in this space. And that's why I asked Ms. Jen to come talk with us today, because she's got a little bit broader view than maybe perhaps I did when we looked at this. So I'm going to ask her to sort of give a thumbnail of some of the things. The governor's issued an executive order. There's other programs out there that maybe we could leverage that could be effective as well. And just trying to get us to something we can grapple with and actually make an effect on where we're going, if that makes sense. Ms. Jen, if you
I
wouldn't mind.
appreciate that. Yep. Ms. Davis?
Chairman and committee members, thank you. Thank you, General Porter, for having me with you here today. As General Porter mentioned, there has been a significant amount of work going on actually across all 3 branches, looking at how we address behavioral health issues, and particularly around workforce. And tackling the workforce issue, as you all know, really would be for all residents of Wyoming, including our veterans. So there are a few things that I want to bring to your attention. You do have a handout there that has some information on it. Can I borrow yours? Because I just gave mine away. And this just kind of is a little bit of a summary about some of the things that we're doing, and then I'll share a little bit more in depth of how we can do this. I think collectively with this committee, with the Labor Health Committee, I think the Education Committee, this crosses a lot of areas as we talk about workforce development. So you'll notice in the information that I gave you, one of the things that is happening out of the executive branch, it is called the Governor's Challenge. The Governor's Challenge is a national effort, excuse me, that is focused on the Veterans Administration and SAMHSA, which is the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration at the federal level. This is a program that's been going for probably close to 5 years. Wyoming's been involved in it for about 3. Now all 50 states and all 5 territories are involved in the effort. And essentially what it looks at is really how do we prevent veteran suicide across the nation. And so they ask you to focus in 3 different areas. One is identifying our veterans, which we know is sometimes a challenge because some of them maybe aren't connected with the VA system once they leave active duty. So part of the challenge that we have is identifying veterans within our state. The second part of that is actually then screening for suicide. So that is the first objective within the governor's challenge. The second objective in that is then once identified, how do you connect them to resources and referrals across the spectrum, not just related to behavioral health, but how do we ensure that they get reemployed if they've disconnected from the service? So it's really looking at all of those resources for them. And then the third part of that is lethal means safety. We do know that the majority of our veteran deaths, particular, end from a firearm. And so how do we do intentional work to protect people's rights with firearms, but also make sure that they're safe, especially if there is a mental health crisis, or just if there's children and other members in their family that they need to protect from firearms, which we'll be talking about in the next bill. So we won't spend time on that right now. One of the things that is really important, I think, in this discussion that you all are having around behavioral health is the Compact Act. That's a newer act that's happened at the federal level. And essentially what that does, it's called the Comprehensive Prevention, Access to Care and Treatment Act. And what that does is it allows any individual who has served in the armed forces in any branch and has had a positive separation from the military, that they have access to behavioral health services, no matter if they're connected to the VA system or not. So they can seek services from any place, particularly in Wyoming, any services, and then that service can be supported through the Veterans Administration here within our state. So it gives our private providers an opportunity to serve our veterans if they're not close to one of our VA facilities, which we have in Sheridan and Cheyenne. And so the Compact Act is really just kind of getting off the ground in Wyoming. So we actually have a survey out right now, which you'll see at the bottom of that page 2 in the slides, that we're surveying all the hospitals, the community mental health centers, and the FQHCs, the federally qualified health centers, who we know are generally our first response teams across the state where people are going for care. And basically what we're asking is a series of different questions, but what I wanted to highlight for the purposes of this discussion is the Compact Act. We want to make sure that all of those facilities know what the Compact Act is, so if a veteran walks through their door, they know that they can serve them, or that they get them to the right resource through the Veterans Administration here in the state. The results that you see on that right now are only from 6 hospitals right now who have responded. We just opened the survey this week, so this is really early data, but it's real time for you. And based on what we are already seeing in the current data, the 6 hospitals that have responded, 83% of them are not familiar with the Compact Act at all. So we have some work to do to help get our medical providers across the state knowledgeable about this, which is one of the goals of the governor's challenge. The second one that you'll see there is that is your facility then connected to a local VA hospital, so that if they are instituting the Compact Act, do they already have a relationship? And you can see there that over 60% of them also do not. So again, some work that we need to do to make sure that we're really helping the veterans of Wyoming to be connected into the right resources through all of our medical facilities to get the right services that they need and deserve. So with that, the other thing that I just quickly want to highlight is, as General Porter mentioned, the governor did an executive order probably about 5-6 months ago that was really around healthcare workforce. And in part of that executive order, we're really focusing on behavioral health. So that executive order essentially did 3 things. One, it asked all of our healthcare licensing boards to come together with industry and see if there are any barriers or challenges to getting licensed and getting into the workforce in a timely manner. So all of our licensing boards have been amazing at doing that. They're having conversations with the public, with the industry, to really just get a sense on what do they see as the barriers, and is there anything that we can do to overcome some of that. The second thing in that executive order is for us to look at how can we, through licensing renewal, get better workforce data? As we've dug into this conversation, and as many of you here know, as sometimes when we ask for data, it's just not available because we haven't been collecting it. So this is an opportunity to just look at getting some additional data that all of the healthcare boards collect upon renewal, so that we really have a better understanding of what our workforce actually looks like. We know that with all of the compacts that are out there, sometimes we have a lot more people working in healthcare that are just doing virtual, aren't actually located within the state of Wyoming, but still serving our population, but only through a virtual means. And so in order for us to have a good idea to draw down funding to support workforce, we need to be able to accurately identify our areas of need within the state. So that's the second part. And then the third part, which is really relevant to this discussion, is that we are digging in to look at the behavioral health and the nursing pipeline specifically to see what do we currently have in the state of Wyoming for the behavioral health workforce. Where are there gaps? How does our licensing requirements align with our curriculum within the state? How does that curriculum then align with what the industry actually needs? And I can tell you, this has become a lot more complicated quickly than what we initially thought. We have 16 behavioral health licenses in the state of Wyoming now. And so we are crosswalking all of the scopes of practice on that, also crosswalking the curriculum for the programs that we have within the state of Wyoming for behavioral health, and then really trying to identify what actually are our needs within that behavioral health workforce and what can actually be done in the state of Wyoming, or where do students need to find those outside of the state of Wyoming. So as we talk about the veteran need that you all are talking about here, it's really important to understand that in order to meet their needs, it comes down to workforce. And in order to do that, we need to look at that workforce conversation comprehensively, which is what we have begun doing. And so we have in that executive order created a Wyoming Healthcare Workforce Task Force that is pulling in industry, education, our insurance providers, legislators, just a wide variety, so that we really have a good understanding of what's going on with that particular area. Just quickly to wrap up on the bottom of those slides, and I apologize for the size of the print there, but we just did a survey of all of the behavioral health licensees in the state of Wyoming. So that includes our psychiatrists, our psychologists, and any of the behavioral health licenses under the Board of Mental Health. So that was a total of 3,698 providers. Those are both our providers that are in state and out of state. So that includes any of our compact individuals that maybe live in a different state, but also practice in Wyoming. We received about a 10% response rate, which is pretty typical for surveys. We all know how survey responses go. But what I want to point out to you all is that primarily we saw a lot of the data come back from the licensed professional counselors, the clinical social workers, and the clinical psychologists, which would be anticipated. Those are our biggest workforce within the behavioral health continuum. 54% of those respondents are not licensed in another state, so meaning that they are not practicing under the compacts. They are specifically just working in the state of Wyoming. 69.8% of the respondents did not graduate from a Wyoming high school. So we're seeing that that tells us that some of those individuals have come into the state to work. And of those respondents, of that 69%, or the 30% that graduated in a Wyoming high school, 57.9% of them actually continued their education in Wyoming. So that's wonderful that we're seeing a high percentage of those high school graduates that did their education here are actually continuing with higher education here in Wyoming. 72% did not receive their education from a Wyoming institution, and some of them that did went through the university, Casper College, Northwest College, and Central Wyoming College. And then just the last piece of data there that I wanted to share with you is we're just finishing up compiling all this data, so I don't have all of the details here for you yet because we are just finishing putting it all together. But some of the things that we saw as the and one of the things that you are recently talking about, and I just put here for the education and career pathways, was requiring financial assistance for going through the programs that we have in the state. Program awareness, I'll give you an example. Our social work program in Wyoming has not been able to fill all of their slots while we have a crisis in that workforce. So we need to dig into that and figure out why. Why do we not have students applying for all of those slots? And then online availability. Some of our programs are only in person. And so we see some students who, maybe live in Baggs, Wyoming, and have a family that can't relocate to Laramie to do their education, and are seeking online opportunities in another state. So that has been seen as a barrier in Wyoming. Clinical experience, having enough clinicians in the field to actually supervise individuals. And we do see a lot of supervision of individuals through our VA system, which is great. We're a great partner in Wyoming for taking on clinical students. And then the last one is recruiting and keeping instructors within our higher education due to the salaries. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea of the work that we're doing already in this space. It's highly complicated, and I think that we really want to make sure that we do this well. And so the last thing I want to share is I just really want to applaud this committee for being interested in this space, really thinking about our veterans' behavioral health and how we can do better to serve them, and really make sure that we are being authentic in supporting them for the service that they gave to all of us. So again, thank you for taking on this topic, and happy to stand for any questions, and then let my colleagues here share additional information.
Ready before we move on to our next speaker? I see Senator Brennan's got her hand. So Senator Brennan, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think, and hopefully I can kind of repeat it like you did. I think you said we have 16 different behavioral licenses. Is that what you were saying? Could you get a list of that to us? I won't make you repeat all 16 out of them right now.
Chairman Brown, Senator Brennan, absolutely. I have a list that I can get over to all of you, and I'm glad you're not asking me to repeat because I don't think I could get it right.
Thank you.
All right, Representative Pendergraft and then Representative Stiver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. Definitely something that I'm interested in. You mentioned at the beginning of your briefing, the governor's challenge had been effective in Wyoming for 3 years now? Mm-hmm. And then you went on to talk about a lot of issues and problems and shortcomings and those sorts of things. I'm wondering if you could provide maybe some data, maybe a little bit of information about what has been accomplished in those 3 years. Or are we still, after 3 years, just getting our feet on the ground? Thank you.
Davis.
Chairman Brown, Representative Pendergraft, that's a great question. The program, the Veterans Challenge, that's been going for about 3 years, we developed a strategic plan with that, with the federal partners. And of the strategic plan, we have met two of those objectives in the first two categories that I shared with you, and then continue to work in the third one, and in fact have set some new goals. So what we accomplished in the first one, which is the identification and screening of veterans. So the first thing that we accomplished in that is through state government, anybody who is a public facing state government entity, they are now asking the question voluntarily. Nobody has to disclose this if they don't want to. But on their forms that they're filling out, whether it's, you know, for your fishing license, whether it's for signing up for WIC benefits, there's a question on there that says, are you a veteran? And would you like additional resources? So now all of our agencies are reporting that through a form that comes in a little database and goes directly to the Veterans Commission for them to make an outreach to those individuals and help get them connected. If they're already connected, to get them additional resources or to help get that process started. So that's one thing that's been accomplished in that. The second thing is we stood up a pilot with one of the hospitals, looking at how are they identifying veterans and embedding that in their electronic health records so that it becomes embedded in an ask as anybody who comes through the hospital. That was done through CRMC in Cheyenne. And that now is embedded within their electronic health record. And that is not an easy feat. For those of you that are maybe familiar with that process, that takes quite a bit of time and energy, but they are up and active with that. We are also now working with Cody Regional to do that there, and then continuing to have that conversation. So that's what's been accomplished in that first group. In the second group, the accomplishment that we made is what we saw when we started the Governor's Challenge is that there was a lot of training going on around suicide prevention. So lots of training around QPR, assist, mental health first aid, a lot of those what we call gatekeeper trainings. There's no place where people could actually go to find those trainings in their local area, that if they need training that could be engaged in that. So we set up a database for that, and that is held at the Department of Health now. So anybody looking for training on suicide prevention can go to the website and either type in that they're looking for a training or that they are a trainer and can be listed in the database. So that is another thing that we've accomplished during that time. The third thing that's still in motion, and this really ties to your next bill, is around the lethal means safety, is we've been working with the university through the Firearms Research Center about having a map. So people who would like to store their firearms for a temporary time, they know where to look for that. We do have two entities in the state of Wyoming that are private businesses that are currently doing that. And then we have multiple sheriffs and police stations across the state who do that. So individuals that are looking for that resource for whatever reason that may be, they can go onto the map on the Firearms Research Center and find those locations. So those are some of the things that have already been accomplished under that. But as we're all here, there's still a long way to go.
Okay, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief follow-up. I don't want to put words into your mouth. Is it fair to say that we're still then gathering information and establishing this after 3 years? Are you able to, at this point, present any data that effectively shows you have made a dent or an impact in suicide rates?
Ms. Davis.
Chairman Brown, Representative Pendergraph. I would say, you know, the data that we collect on suicides across the state, we have seen the last couple of years our trend line flattening out instead of continuing to escalate like we'd seen in the past. Now, can I tell you that everything that we've done has made that difference in the trend line? No, I can't say that because it's multifactorial when we see those changes within our suicide rates. So my hope, and to answer your question to that, is I think we're seeing a positive trend. And I think we need to keep pursuing what we're doing and continuing to build on that so that we continue to see that trend line flatten or even better decrease. So the initial is positive, but as far as specific data, no, because that usually was more longitudinal for us to look at.
Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the compact, I'm aware of it because there's signs in the VA. But with the veteran services like the VFW, American Legion, them, this is never discussed. This information is not out there. This needs to go to the post level. And a follow-up, Mr. Chairman, is on your data on your healthcare workers and your licensee. A couple of years ago in labor health, we passed for CAP and CAP-ES to come into the state. And we went in there and they changed the criteria, what they need to have to take, dropped the hours down to 2,000 hours to be able to do this. But the problem was, and I told them, and I argued it passed, and the old chairman come up and apologized. There's a national standard out there, and we need to stick to the national standard. So my question is, how many of your data is that part of your data on the 16?
Yes.
Chairman Brown, Representative Stivar, yes. That is part of the data that we have. And I didn't bring all of that with me today. I didn't want to steal all of General Porter's thunder. But I can certainly share that with the committee. That's been part of what we did in the initial mapping, is looked at those 16 licenses that we have. We also have a few other programs that operate like peer support counselors. We also have those in Wyoming, but that's not a license. But of the 16 licenses, yes, the CAP and the CAPA are in that. And I can share with you how many we have and what that looks like currently in the state. So happy to get that to you.
Thank you.
And Chairman, Representative Stivar, just to address your first thing on the Compact Act, you're exactly right. There just is not enough knowledge out there. And that's what we're really finding, as I shared with you in that survey. There's just not knowledge out there of it yet. So we're working really closely through the Governor's Challenge with both of the VAs to start disseminating that information and working, like I said, with those other entities. Our VA group is working on trying to get that out within the different regions and posts in that across the state. And then there'll be a group really targeting on the the medical and mental health providers as well. So there is work to be done there for sure.
Representative Smith, did you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have in all these different studies any idea of a root cause of the suicide increase? And then also, when people want to seek help, is there usually, do they want to go face-to-face, telehealth, or the phone calls with the 988?
Ms. Davis?
Chairman Brown, Representative Smith, there is some data out there on that. I don't have that with me, but I can certainly get that for you. Typically what they have seen in the Veterans Administration, so this would be all veterans, not just Wyoming, is that very often they want to have a connection with somebody who has also been service connected to have that support and conversation. So in the 988 line, when you, just like the previous 800 number, when you press 1 in the 988, it actually connects you with veteran service, so that it is another member of the service community to speak with those individuals, because we have seen from the data that is the preference for our veterans. I don't know what that data specifically looks like in Wyoming, but I can refer to General Porter over here saying he has it. So I'll let him take the rest of that response.
General Porter, please.
Mr. Chairman and sir, I think I was looking for the slides when we initially did, we were talking about trying to solve the problem. I don't seem to have them here, but I'll refer you back to those as we look at it. As I recall, I think we did a very good job of defining the problem that the suicides in Wyoming particularly are disproportionately veteran, and it is disproportionately by firearms. Maybe I can get it before we leave here, but I'll pull those slides back up again and we can have that discussion if that's all right, sir. If I'm hitting what you're asking.
Senator Cole, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a general question about, I guess, what we're trying to do here. On one hand, veterans talking to veterans, I believe works. I mean, I think that is probably the best thing that you come up with. Now we're trying to I guess, convert a veteran into a psychologist and have them talk to folks to try to help them and thinking that maybe that'll work better. Is that kind of what you're trying to accomplish here with this program? Because I really wonder about, we find a good thing, veterans talking to veterans, and I'm 100% behind that. But going to a psychologist, my question is this, is you got a person who's a veteran, who's just a guy like them or a gal like them, who's a veteran, they can talk to them. Now they go back to a person who is in fact a psychologist or whatever training you may have, and they've probably talked to a bunch of those kind of people. And I really wonder what the value is, but I mean, are we putting our eggs in the right basket here to convert a person into a psychologist, somebody that probably already have talked to, as opposed to just a veteran who maybe would connect better? I'm unsure about what's the goal is what we really want to do here. Just instead of just training, having more veterans available, talk to veterans. Could you help me out with understanding why, in fact, a trained person who sounds just like a bunch of other trained people they've been talking to is better than just talking to a veteran? I guess that's my question, if I said that correctly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Chairman Brown, Senator Kolb, I'm not 100% sure I'm following your question, so I'm gonna see if I get it. If I don't, please let me know. The continuum of care for behavioral health issues is important for all of us to understand. Our main objective is to prevent somebody from even needing to go to a high level of care, right? That's the ideal, which is what a veterans talking to veterans accomplishes. It is a way for those individuals to connect with a peer who has had some of those same experiences, which we know those civilians who have not had those military experiences can't relate in the same way. So I too am with you and really support the veterans talking to veterans. I think we have seen it be really effective. We hear really good things from the veterans who participate. It is a needed part of the continuum. It is a peer support model. You then have to have the support continuum beyond that. Those individuals have some coaching training, which is great, helps them to be able to identify if there's something deeper that needs to have a referral. So then what we need, if an individual does have something deeper, then maybe they need a referral into one of the professionals, whether that be a psychologist, a social worker, a counselor, whatever that might be. You need those as part of the continuum as well. The hope is, and I think I'm getting to your question here, is if you have veterans who go back, maybe who have left service and now want to pursue a degree or something within the behavioral health continuum and become a support for veterans, maybe that's what they want to focus on. Maybe they want to focus on kids. I don't know. But if you have a veteran who now needs to reskill and wants to go to school to do that and become a provider, then that does speak to those veterans as a professional in that field who has also had those same experiences. So there is a benefit in that as you go up the continuum. I think where there becomes a disconnect sometimes, and this is in a variety of special populations, you connect with somebody that you're talking with in the behavioral health field because you have a connection. And oftentimes what we hear is veterans like to have someone in that space. So if we have veterans who are skilled in those higher level professions, that's a great continuum to continue to serve. That does not mean that we're forcing them or making them a mental health professional. I think you're opening a door for individuals who may need a new skill set after leaving the military and may want to pursue that. But the veterans talking to veterans is a different skill set because that's a peer model. Did I get to what you were asking or not?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, my point is that you convert people into what comes out of the educational system for psychology, for a psychological point of view. And you basically turn them into the same people you already have. That was my question, is what value does that have after you get educated, you get graduated, you've now repeated what your professor told you to tell you, and you put a product out there that turns into what you've already had in life as a psychologist. You've gone to those folks. And I that was my question, is I just wonder the total value of that. And are we just turning around and copying what we already are doing? That was my philosophical question. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're more.
Chairman Brown.
I also see Colonel Smith is chomping at the bit as well, so please.
I'll just quickly respond to that, Chairman Brown and Senator Kolb. I think that's a matter of how you look at the value of the educational system of, producing those high-skilled professionals who go through a program to learn those skills. And I would hope you don't just repeat what you're taught. Like, we all have had different educational experiences, and you use those to develop based on your lived experiences as well. That gives you the fundamental knowledge to do that. And so I do think there is a difference. I think we do access those individuals now within the system, and I think it works for some people and it doesn't work for other people. So you have to have all of it. You have to have a continuum of care, just meeting the needs of everybody within the system. Turn it over to you.
Mr. Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on that, and Ms. Davis talking about the continuum of care, just wanted to clarify a few things. The veterans talking to veterans, a large percentage of the training that the coaches go through is to try to help them identify when the veteran they're dealing with is well beyond the peer-to-peer counseling and get them referred to the healthcare professionals that need to deal with their issues. So, but I also wanted to talk about this bill in particular. This bill is not trying to convert veterans into mental health professionals. What this bill does, and I'm thankful for the committee for willing to broach this topic, this really is trying to get at increasing the number of providers within our state. If you look on page 4 and page 5, the staff comment talks about the nursing and teaching that this is kind of based on, where this creates a loan program for people already interested in the mental health professions, that if they're willing to commit to work with veterans upon graduation and licensing, going through all that process, then they don't have to repay the bill, basically the loan. So really, this bill is about creating providers in the state of Wyoming. As General Porter said at the onset, it's a complex issue. As Jen just kind of talked about, there are a lot of providers out there. We sense there's a need for additional providers specifically working with veterans, but we really don't have any data to tell you where in the state or if in the state there's a lack. We feel it, but we don't really know it. And that's part of our problem. We appreciate the bill. We appreciate the committee wanting to do that, but that's part of our problem with trying to support this bill to you all, is it's not very data driven. It's a great concept. It's something we've done with teachers and nurses to try to encourage people to stay in Wyoming upon graduation, because otherwise, as this bill does, they have to pay back the loan if they don't stay and work with veterans. So it's a potentially great program trying to address a problem I can't convince you there is. We want more people to work with veterans because we know we have a mental health problem with veterans. That's what this bill does. What it doesn't do is anything beyond that. We're really trying to create providers.
All right, guys, we're gonna try to wrap up comments and questions here. What I'd like to try to do is try to work this bill. I think the co-chairman and I have discussed this a little bit. So we'll open up for at least one, maybe two more questions. But we're going to try to work this bill before lunch. We're not going to take this bill and sponsor it today. We are going to take the request of pushing this out for a little bit longer. And we'll take this as one of the last bills for our last meeting. But with that being said, let's go ahead, go Representative Pendergraft and then Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to dig just a little bit deeper into what I think Senator Kolb is getting at. I have been a resident of Wyoming virtually my entire life, and in all of those years, Wyoming has suffered from a high suicide rate. We have had psychiatrists, psychologists working in this field, and it's been a period of emphasis for a long time in this state, and yet I haven't seen any data that says that this higher level of continuum is actually successful. And so what I'm asking you is, can you point to me to say that our goal of having a higher level of continuum is going to actually work against the problem? Is there data that says that this level of care is actually successful?
General.
Yeah, Chairman Brown, Representative Pendergraft, and I'll let Jen. I think that's one of the challenge we're getting at. What we, Veterans Talking to Veterans, to Senator Kolb's point, is a discrete program that we think is going to be very effective in of itself. But as Chris has also said, there's a sense that in our rural communities out here, we don't have the level of mental health capability and capacity that we would want. And although I can't prove that to you just yet, and that's really what I'm asking is for a little time to get after that. I think it's almost, a fait accompli that if we have more trained, professional, experienced people that can talk to veterans and those even outside the veteran community that intend on suicide, that's helpful, that we can get after. Until we do it, I don't know that we will know. But I think we got to make the honest attempt to get after it. That's what this bill was trying to do, was something large to really affect the suicide rate across the state of Wyoming of how do you drive it down? Because you said, what changes? What do we do? What do we have to make the change? This is one I believe in. I don't have the data to tell you just yet. And so that's what I'm asking for, is just a little bit more time. I think we have the problem solved, although Representative Smith may disagree. I think we have the problem identified. I don't have confidence that the solution that we're providing you is where we need to go. And that's what I'm asking for, in terms of a little bit more time to get with Jen and the other folks in the state and see if we can do this. We know, for example, how many folks are going to the University of Wyoming and taking mental health and social work classes. What I couldn't tell you is how many stay. We know mental health professionals are in Wyoming, but I can't tell you how often they're touching veterans. So there's just a lack of data to really drive an informed recommendation at this point. And let me turn over to you, Jen, and you can kick me back in bounds if I get out of the way.
Chairman Brown, Representative Pendergraft, I think the data question is really important, and that's part of that work that we're doing under that executive order. We don't have all of the data that we need to know. And so I think that also will take some time to develop, because you'll have to collect it off of licensing renewals and all of that. So I want to go back to the point that have to have a continuum of care, because people's needs are at a variety of different levels. And so to part of your point, do we just, solve suicide by getting more high-level professionals in the field? I would say no. That has to be part of the solution, but it's one part of the solution. When we look at the data around suicide, many of those individuals do not have a diagnosed mental health issue. It is an acute stressor that has happened in their life, either a relationship issue, a financial issue. We see that data nationally. That's an acute stressor. That does not mean that they need someone to treat them for mental health diagnosis, because it's not a mental health diagnosis. What we also need to understand about suicide in particular is that it really is a social issue. This is something that we all need to be part of the solution on, not just our highly skilled professionals, not just, a specialty peer. All of us, we all have a role to play. There are neighbors, there are children, there are families. There's probably everybody in this room has had some sort of experience with suicide, whether it be within your own family, a friend or neighbor. This is an issue that has to be seen as a social issue. And so we have to get everybody involved in being part of the solution. That means our faith community, that means our neighbors, that means our family, and that means our professionals too. Because the other percentage of individuals who are dying by suicide do have some underlying mental health issues. Those individuals need skilled professionals to work with them. I'm a physical therapist by background. If somebody just needs an exercise program, they don't necessarily need to come to me. If they've had an injury and they're hurt and there is, neurological problems with it, that's my skill set. That's what I spent all of my time and energy in school to learn. That doesn't mean I have to see everybody who has any musculoskeletal issue. It's the same thing in behavioral health. You have to have a continuum. And so I hope that helps answer that of, it's everybody and everything that we need to tackle this problem if we really want to see the suicide numbers go down.
All right, committee, we're gonna go ahead and tidy up testimony at this point. As stated earlier, what we're going to do is we are going to make a few decisions. We're not necessarily going to work the bill. It'll feel like we're working the bill, but we are going to move this bill forward to our next meeting for final disposition. But with that, I think what we can do is go ahead and start. So if everybody wants to go back to their bill and co-chairman, do you have some proposed items, or would you like me to walk bill page by page with the staff comments?
I think we'll just go page by page. That'd be the best way to do it.
All right, committee, let's go ahead and go page by page here real quick. And then, like I said, anything that we're not going to take, we'll take voice votes on these, but keep in mind that anything that we do on these for discussion purposes are always subject to change as we move forward as well. Yes, Representative Berger.
So if this bill will move forward, then it will allow for some public comment at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to give, and that's a good point, Representative, what we're going to do is we're going to give a little bit more substantive changes, some of the outlined staff comments and some of the highlighted areas that need to have some addressed information. That'll give a little bit more detail to the public. So when they have questions about what this bill is going to do, they'll be a little bit more identified. So let's go ahead and walk through the bill, starting here on page, let's roll to page, I think 3 is the first staff comment. Yep. Mr. Co-Chairman, do you have anything on the staff comment for page 3?
No, Mr. Chairman, I think we have the decision point here. UW's input is to include PhD programs in addition to masters and bachelors. And of course, we want to consider whether we want to include community colleges in this as well. So open to any discussion on this.
Okay, committee, any discussion? Representative Stivar.
Now, in that staff comment, they want to do bachelors and masters. But let's say bachelor in social work can take the CSW test. They don't have the clinical to do the LCSW because they don't have they haven't been through the masters. I think it just needs to be left to the master degree only. Working with veterans in this, are we going to go ahead and pay for somebody to be a case manager that just has a bachelor's and a CSW?
Okay.
If we're really wanting to help people, they need to be qualified.
Committee, anything else? Think that, would you like to, I think that's the way we have it written right now. We keep it underneath there with the master's degree only, so bachelor's or master's, do we want to strike baccalaureate degree up above?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll call it a motion and we'll just stick with this. We'll get rid of baccalaureate. I'm not going to call for seconds or anything like that because we're just working the bill right now. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor of striking baccalaureate degree on page 2, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, that'll pass. All right. Next staff comment is how this loan repayment program interacts with any GI benefits and whether to reduce the loan amount by any other state grants. Discussion on that. Okay, co-chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think that'd be a good improvement to the bill to ensure that other sources of funding are sought first before this program. So I'll make that motion.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Staff, is that clear to you? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, that passes. And then we have underneath that staff comment going into lines 8, 9, 12, and 13. We have the percentages of their working hours. Any discussion on those? Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to look at the nursing program and what their requirements are and use the same numbers, the nursing or what's the other, the doctor program? You know, Wiki here, not Wiki. Witchy. And use their standard that's already set.
That's, yeah, and I was just gonna say that feels more like whammy, but whammy, yeah. So, too many acronyms, yes, too many acronyms. Yep. Can you look that up for us and get that for us and just plug those numbers in there if this passes? So committee, any further discussion on that? Okay, all in favor of that, please signify by saying aye. Oh, whoa,
Aye.
yes.
Oh, man, I'm confused. Which one are we doing? Are we doing the nursing program or the?
Or whammy.
Or whammy?
Dates on both.
Okay.
So if we can get both of those and then we will plug whatever the committee feels, we'll keep those as highlights. So that's just a directive more than a change. Yep, and that would be perfect. Just put them both in a staff comment for the next iteration of the bill. All right, committee, at the bottom of page 4 is where a lot of the work, in my opinion, is needs to probably be decided. Any discussion? Or I'm sorry, not 4. Going into page 5, allowing the recipient to start the academic program, takes time off, and then returns what we'd like to do with that. Whether we offer deferments, whether we require that to be immediately starting paid back. Representative Stivar.
Never mind, because we just took the baccalaureate out. They go straight into the master's program. That's what it's for. Never mind.
Okay. So no discussion. Yes, Senator Cole.
Yeah, does this work with the UW policy? I mean, are we doing something? Oh. Is this, Mr. Chairman, is this going to work or mesh with the UW's policy that they currently have for the master's degrees? I mean, is there any issue conflict here that we're creating? That was my question.
I'm seeing a shaking head no, but I think what we'll do is we will ask, once we have this version, please share this directly with the university, and then we'll have you guys be prepared to make sure that you guys are letting us know of any conflicts that we have created. We're pretty good at doing that sometimes, so. All right, committee, down to page 6, whether to consider the uniform services as defined by this. That includes some additional work. That was a bill that we passed 2 years ago, I think, or maybe just last year, changing better or armed services to uniform services, and that does include health and human services, stuff like that. Any consideration on changing that? Seeing kind of a shaking head, no, I think kind of leaving that as is, okay? Moving down to page 8, the committee wished to add a sunset. Anybody interested in adding a sunset to this? Okay, go ahead and make a recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend a sunset. It just seems prudent to give something a test rather than locking it in forever.
Would you like to do 10 years, 5 years, 4, 6?
2?
2 would probably face. a
You
pretty
asked
tough climb.
me
Yeah,
what
no,
I would like.
So that's 2. Any other discussion? We'll say that. Yes, Senator Cole.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I would start off with 6 years minimum for a sunset. I'm up for discussion though.
And we can have this, we can change this again. 6 work for the next iteration of the bill. Senator Brennan?
I personally think on something like this, we should go out to 10 years. I'm not necessarily opposed to 6, but I think 10 would be better.
Okay, I'm getting a shaking head of yes from the original proposer, so we'll go ahead and add 10. All in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. And we already discussed the uniformed services again. I don't think we want to take that out. Section 2 is the appropriation. Any discussion on adding an appropriation at this point, or would we like to leave that open until we work the bill fully? Senator Culp?
Mr. Chairman, I think until we have a better grasp on how many people we could possibly be talking about, I think the appropriation, conversation wouldn't be appropriate.
I kind of agree. I think we'll leave that open for the next iteration. And then we'll also leave the percentage amount for UW. We'll keep that available. And then also with that, Mike, if you wouldn't mind probably starting to work with the dean and anybody else around that area of what that might look like, what your guys' cost would be on that. So we have at least a rough estimate.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Representative Wiley.
could I also ask that we maybe have some information on what one participant would cost going through this program?
Okay. All right. Next idea committee. I don't think we want to decide on this one since we don't know where we're coming from this, but it is in the staff comment where we want to fund it from. General fund, school foundation account, out of their block grant as we did earlier, those types of things. So keep that in mind as we're rolling through. Let's keep that staff comment available in there, please. And everything else looks like it's there. So committee, is there any other changes that we'd like to see before we move this to the next committee meeting? Senator Culp?
Mr. Chairman, we didn't have the block grant, considered. I didn't see that in the language that we were looking at earlier. So I think that's a good option.
Okay, so if you can include that as one of the opportunities for us. Okay. Yes, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for Mr. Smith with the UW. I'd like to know how many veterans we have in the social work program now. Is information and more about the doctoral program for social work. And are there any veteran instructors currently in the social work field here at UW?
And I think some of that is probably attainable. I think it is also maybe not attainable in certain circumstances as well. So
yeah, I understand.
Yep.
Just what you
so
can
the
give
best
me
that you
so-
can get us. And I'm also seeing a shaking head in the back of the room too. So appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Staff, are you clear on everything from that point? Getting a thumbs up there. Committee, with that, we are 3 minutes into our lunch hour. I am going to give us an extra 15 minutes on that lunch hour because we are a little ahead of schedule. That is going to put us back here. Let's do 1:15 back here, and we will take up military suicide prevention right at 1:15. All right.